You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Good morning. So glad you're here. Life is sweet here at Flo's Focus. Pull up a chair. The coffee's perked, so go ahead, pour yourself a cup. Let's have some fun and see what we can find to explore today. My regular listeners know that I like to start my show with something lighthearted, something to make us smile in the morning and help us have a happy day. Well, this show might be a little different. This week's show is a little different because it has one focus and one focus only. It's on workman's compensation. Now, don't tune it out just because you heard those words, because you don't think you need to know about that. You see, I was sure I was never going to be injured at my job. There was no way, even though many other nurses were injured and I saw some health injuries occur. I was sure I would not be one of those. You see, I was very strong when I was young, and I just knew that I would always be that strong, and I would always be able to do my work until the day I retired. However, that did not end up being the case. And because there is such a life-impacting change when you are injured at work, you're already in a world of agony. It's as though you've been plunged into a dark, deep ocean, and it's night and there's no way out. Instead, waves keep crashing over your head again and again and again. Those waves, I suppose, to me, represented workers' compensation because it's not an easy system to have to go through. And it seems that constantly there are hoops that you have to jump through, if you will. Fortunately, today we have someone that will be speaking on our show, and he has had a lot of experience in workman comp issues. Both of us also have been injured personally and know what it's like to go through this dark tunnel that seems at first to have no escape and no lights that will show you a way out, at least in the beginning. It's just horrendous. There is no explanation for how rough workman's comp issues can be when you're already hurting. Stress upon stress upon stress. Well, workman's comp isn't supposed to be that way, but for the worker, it often is. You see, it often pits the worker against the people or the place that they work for, and thus the people that they work with. Sadly, that's a place that most workers never chose to be at to begin with. The cases of individuals, the fraudulent cases, are very, very few. But yet every case is treated as though it was fraudulent. Well, you see, it boils down to money. And sadly, that's the last thing that most employees are thinking about at this point in time. They just need enough to survive on. They cannot survive on peanuts, literally. They have needs, They have one of those bad life habits called they need shelter and food. So what can you say? Well, it's not an easy thing to go through for sure. Though there are many facts that you can find regarding what workman's comp is, there's not very much out there regarding how that's going to affect you as a person. Now, if you go through a divorce, there's lots of information on how to survive divorces. There's seminars, there's all sorts of things. But when you go through a life-altering change because of injury, because you also need to go through workman comp because you were hurt at work, there's not a whole lot to help you through the maze. And because my injury was very life-changing for me, that's why I've chosen to focus on this today. You see, it's just shy of 12 years from when my injury occurred and workman's comp became a part of my life. From the minute that you write down the form, when you fill out that form, then life changes and you are no longer who you were in your previous career. You become a workman's comp individual. And those changes are truly life altering. First things I remember about filing for workman's comp was I just filed out the paperwork that we were required to do, first of all, even if there was a minor injury or a minor incident. And then it was it seemed a long time before anything happened other than I had to stay off work and I was put on light duty. Then the next thing that happened, I was called to the Human Resources office. And at that point in time, I was told that my case had been denied. Well, what was I to say or do? There was nothing I could say or do. I just said, okay. And I wondered how in the world I was going to survive. What I didn't know was that this is very typical. Your employer will often tell you that your case has been denied, and perhaps it has been. But truth is, if you just stay honest and you continue to do the best that you can, jumping through the hoops they ask you to, at some point in time, it will all work out. This I guarantee, although when you are in the midst of it, it sure doesn't seem like there's any way out of this horrible situation. But don't give up and don't give in. And whatever you do, don't go live with great Aunt Samantha. Stay working as long as you possibly can. Yes, there were days I hurt so bad I had to call in sick. I always tried to make sure that my doctors knew when I was this bad. And I also always had my doctors and physical therapy stay in touch through writing, through the forms that I was given, so that my work did know what was happening with my individual. One final aspect regarding workman's comp that I would make you aware of is that filing a fraud case is considered a felony. So who in the world is going to want to file a fraud case? Well, if they think they can get a lot of money from it or whatever, they are really barking up the wrong tree, and it makes it tough for everyone else. It's just like in the hospitals, we pay excess costs for those who don't pay their medical bills. It's just not fair, but it's right now the way the system works. Workers' compensation insurance fraud occurs in simple and complex schemes, and they often require difficult and lengthy investigations. What happens is the employee may exaggerate or even fabricate injuries. And of course, at the other end of the spectrum, you have these white-collar criminals is what they call them. And that includes doctors and lawyers, the guys that wear the white collars. And they conspire with others to defraud the system by creating false or exaggerated claims, overtreating and overprescribing harmful and addictive drugs. Insurance companies pick up the tab, passing the cost on to policyholders, taxpayers, and the general public. The Workers' Compensation Fraud Program was established in 1991. The legislator made workers' compensation fraud a felony, required insurers to report suspected fraud, and established a mechanism for funding enforcement and prosecution activities. The legislation established the Fraud Assessment Commission to determine the level of assessments to fund investigation and prosecution of workers' compensation insurance fraud. So, because a few people choose to work in an area that will become a felon, because a few people choose to present a fraud case, it makes it tough on everyone else. During fiscal year 2015 and 16, the Fraud Division identified and reported 5,380 suspected fraud cases, assigned 502 new cases, made 249 arrests, and referred 167 cases to prosecuting attorneys, or rather authorities. Potential loss amounted to a huge amount, one that will take me a minute to even spit out. I mean, it is a huge amount. And that's just out of 5,380 cases. And those are suspected fraud cases. So, once they are discovered, they're going to spend a lot of time in jail. And it's really just not worth it. I wish people would smarten up and not do that, because it makes it tough on all those who are honest and who have been truly hurt at work. People who hate their jobs are sometimes the ones who are guilty of fraudulent cases. Not long ago, there was a lady in the news. Oh, I think it was back in May, if I recall right. And she decided that she wanted to get out of work. And she took the get out of work free card along with a nice workers' compensation check. And she took it without hesitation. You see, this is 2017 and everyone is watching. And they should watch. I absolutely state that if you're a regular worker, watch people that state that they are hurt. You'll know if they're hurt. And if they truly are hurt, help them. Make it easier on them, because there is that feeling that people really don't believe you that you're hurt. And it feels awful. Besides living with the pain, you have to now live with coworkers who aren't quite sure if you're hurt or not. But once you have determined that they are hurt, help them. But if you don't think that they are hurt and you have proof of that, then you need to report it. Just like with this lady. Well, White was employed. We don't know exactly where. That's okay. That's not what counts. Well, she was abruptly interrupted from her desk job by a falling sprinkler component. Do you remember that at all? Rather than simply reporting the incident to maintenance, she rapidly made her plan, and she wanted to get in on that workman's comp cash, even if she did it fraudulently. And after making sure nobody else was looking, she slapped herself in the face with the metal ring. Unfortunately for White, someone was watching, even though she couldn't see them, and it happened to be a security camera. Upon filing the claim, her employer had a hunch that something was amiss and reported it to the Division of Investigative and Forensic Services. You see, Forensic Services does a lot more than just work on issues where individuals have died and they are solving the case. So when agents checked the tape, it was pretty clear what had happened, and White was charged with workers' compensation insurance fraud. So she didn't get free help. She was convicted with the help of the video, and guess what? She didn't go to jail, but she received 18 months of probation. And most likely, the only reason she didn't go to jail was that she had a good record from before. So be careful. Watch your fellow employees. You know, you might not have seen what happened, but if they talk with you and they talk to you about things that don't really add up, make sure you let your employer know. They can do the rest of the work. One thing to keep in mind is that there are many forms of fraud, and workman's compensation fraud can have forms that are very brazen and some very subtle forms. You wouldn't think of these as necessarily being fraudulent issues, but they actually are, and they include exaggerating symptoms. Sometimes employees exaggerate the severity or duration of their symptoms, or both, and they say they're unable to do work that they're actually capable of. If the doctor's orders say they can do it, then they should be able to do it. Working elsewhere. Another form of fraud occurs when those who are off work due to total or partial disability take on another job while collecting workers' compensation wage replacement benefits. Typically, those cases are found out about because an employer is suspicious and calls the claims representative. Sometimes they can verify those suspicions through surveillance. Fabricating an injury. In rare cases, like we mentioned of the lady that hit herself on the head, employees have fabricated injuries entirely to get coverage for an injury that occurred previously or simply to get paid time off work. If there were no witnesses to the alleged incident, it can be tough to prove fraud in these cases. But security cameras can sometimes help, as it did in that particular case. SFM, Special Investigations Unit, is constantly looking into questionable claims by conducting background checks and determining whether further investigation, such as surveillance, is warranted. Typically, an investigation starts with claim representatives, attorneys, or employers suspecting fraud. Things that might tip an employer or claims representative off to potential fraud include learning the claimant has a criminal history, hearing that the claimant is working side jobs, finding that medical notes aren't consistent with the injury report, seeing that there is excessive medical treatment and the employee doesn't seem to want to return to work. If you suspect fraud, contact your SFM claims representative at 1-800-937-1181, or you can even report it online. There's an online contact form. If you'll just go to www.sfmic.com, it will show you how to report that online. And prevent fraud with thorough hiring practices. Of course, it's very important for the employer to be careful who you hire. Even as it gets tougher to fill vacancies as the economy picks up, one should not lower their standards. Check references, verify educational and work history, and conduct criminal background checks. When investigating questionable claims, SFM sometimes discovers employees had felony convictions their employers hadn't been aware of. Thorough investigating accidents after they occur. Take photos and talk to witnesses. That helps sometimes. The primary reason for investigating accidents should be for safety reasons, to ensure similar accidents don't happen again. And it's important that your injured employee doesn't feel like a suspect, especially the innocent ones, because they're having a hard enough time anyway. As I've so often mentioned, and as you can find many references to, unfortunately, it often becomes a war between the employer and the employee, or at least it feels that way. The investigations reveal signs of fraud on the rare occasions when it does happen. The vast majority of workers' compensation claims, again, are legitimate, and the chances that fraud will occur at your workplace are slim. But maintaining good employment practices and managing claims thoroughly will lower the chances even more. And it's still as important as it ever was to make sure that you hire responsibly if you are an employer. And if you're an employee, please don't even think about doing a fraudulent claim. There's too many people out there who are hurting and who need help and who are actually truly needing their employer to help them, not work against them.
I've known Terry for many years. Therefore, what you'll be listening to sounds more like a one-to-one conversation or a phone conversation. It's hard to interview someone who you've known for so long. So I hope you enjoy this.
Hi, Terry. So glad you could join
Hi.
us today. I'm so happy to have you here. How are you doing today? And could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, well, I'm doing pretty well. I'd like Willie Nelson. I woke up not dead this morning, so that's a good thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, as far as any of my workers' comp expertise, I was when I was active in our union, I went through pretty much quite a bit of training at the UW School for Workers, and I've had a lot of my own experience dealing with workers' comp, and is in my capacity as a union steward, I helped some other people as well. So that's been a while ago. I'm not really current on all the laws, but I think they're pretty much. And besides,
Okay,
there's
great.
things that just are like common sense that really don't apply as to whether the law has changed or not, if you understand what I'm saying here.
Absolutely. Yeah, coming on to talk with us about workman's comp, because I know it affects a lot of people. And as you know, I really went through a lot with workman's comp. You were there for me, and I really appreciated that because it really felt like I was alone in the situation. So it was really nice to have a friend who understood some of the workman's comp's laws and could really help me feel better while I was going through so much of what I went through. If I'm understanding you correctly, you are trained in workman's comp law by the UW School for Workers?
Yes, and not only like the law, but the procedures. I mean, what's a good thing to do and what's not a good thing to do when you're dealing with workers' comp.
Okay, great. Now, when you were going to that school, do you remember any of the courses that you had in particular?
No, they weren't really like what you would call courses. They were more or less like just seminars. You know, you'd go and you'd
interesting.
You'd sit and listen to them for an hour and a half or something. And it was, like I say, not only laws, it was how to deal with workers' comp, how to deal with your, what to expect when you're dealing with them, that sort of thing.
Okay, really great. So was this required, or was it something you chose to do so that it would help you more with what you were doing at the time professionally?
No, it wasn't required. It was an elective. It was something that I volunteered for.
Please.
And, of course, it was paid
Wonderful.
for through the union, so that was...
That's great.
Well, you did bring up a pretty important point. So many times people are alone. There's really nobody to help them, and many times you don't get the straight scoop from your employer or from the insurance company that's covering your claim.
Yes, it feels like you're actually sometimes you're fighting them. I mean, you literally are. I know when I was going through it, one of the things that helped me was I was nursing up in the hospital, and another nurse got hurt. And one of the things that she said in tears was, whatever you do not lose your paperwork, because you are going to need it if you ever do get hurt. Well, at the time, I brushed it off. I mean, I was fine. I was a nurse. I was still up and at it. I thought, well, I'm not going to get hurt. I don't really need to know that. But I remembered that because she was in tears and so emotional about that. So when I was actually hurt, I kept all my paperwork, and it was a good thing I did, because what I learned was my employer and I guess, I don't know what they call it nowadays. At that time, I believe it was human resources, whatever the department is now called, they constantly lost my paperwork. And I had to make copies of my paperwork and take it in and give it to them. And that wasn't all that I felt like I was alone in. I've also had to go through constantly giving my time. It wasn't time cards. It was it was a form, though, and you would write out the time you would actually be working, or it was the time you actually worked your light duty positions, because I did a lot of things. In fact, I was changed from the nursing department into the environmental department for a while, and I worked the information desk. I became known sort of as the resource nurse, because when I was working, my whole world was 4A, and all of a sudden, I really got to know the hospital because I was sitting at the information desk, so I knew all kinds of things. But I did feel very alone, other than some of the people that I worked with at the information desk, and there were some people that were very helpful, but not the people that really are in the position where they could have been helpful. They were the ones that really made me feel alone most of the time. So I definitely know how
the people who are ostensibly there to help won't help. Well, right. I think you made an important point. Another thing is you got to cooperate with them 100%. They want you to go to the doctor, to the doctor. They want you to go through some program for evaluation or something. Go through it, whether you think it's going to be helpful or not. Because if you don't, then you've been uncooperative, you see, and you haven't, so they can use that against you. And you're absolutely right about keeping all of your paperwork, everything that you keep. And another thing, too, if you speak with somebody, it's a good idea to keep it like on the phone, or you have an appointment with somebody. It's a good idea to keep track of who that was, what time and what date it was. And then as soon as you can, write a synopsis of what all was said, because then that's when it's fresh in your memory, Later on, you try to remember what they said. You might not remember it all. So, it's the more of this kind of stuff you do, the better off you are when it finally comes to the the showdown,
Exactly. Because it will eventually come to that. It took me probably a little over a year before I was put on permanent disability. And actually, at the time, it wasn't permanent. It became permanent later. I still, after, actually, my workman comp individual caseworker had told me that if I ever moved, I would probably be put in review again which happened when I got married and moved to Iowa. And it wasn't an issue really. I had a doctor to go to. Well, I had to find one in a hurry, but I found one that could finally handle it. And that was another issue that I had, was that I was working for a federal position. And at that time, it was a lot harder to find federal lawyers for some reason. Everyone was able to do state work, but very few knew federal law. So that was sure a situation
a lot of
for
times
me to go through.
a lot of times my understanding of that, I've never really dealt with the federal. It's only, state and, like private employers. A lawyer is reluctant to take on the entire federal government. That's kind of a problem,
Yes, which can be a big problem. I don't know that I eventually ended up needing one, but at the time I sure could have used the support and just someone to give me some definite federal legal advice too.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience is that, if you stick with, I see like 75% of all declined or rejected claims are never pursued any further. You see, so a lot of people, they think, well, they've rejected my claim. I'm hung out to dry. There's nothing I can do. Well, you continue to pursue it. You don't let that. Besides, most of the time, your problem doesn't go away anyway. It gets worse, and then you have to go to you have to do it, And another thing too that a lot of times people don't understand is a re-injury of an old injury is a new injury, because they'll say, well, we've done everything we can for this injury, so you can't get any more. You can't make any more claim. But if you re-injure that, it's considered a new injury.
That's interesting. Well, I know you're so right about them telling you that you won't be accepted the first time. That sure happened to me. I was told flat out that my case was refused by Human Resources, who eventually ended up handling it and doing what they needed to do with it, but I had to go through a whole lot of hoops before they finally did, and I did everything that they asked me to. Whatever it was, I did, no matter what it was. And there were issues along the way. I mean, when you're hurting physically and everything in your world is changing anyway, it's very difficult.
Well, yeah, you're not like in a big position to be, putting on a big fight. You know what I mean?
Right.
You've kind of taken one fall in the match already,
Exactly. That's what I told one of the other nurses when I was leaving, or I had left, but I talked with her, and she had been injured. And I said, well, the one thing I can definitely tell you is you better prepare to be a bulldog and grab hold and do not let go, because that's the only way you're going to get through it. You just can't let go. Whatever you do, you've got to go through everything that they want you to do, like you said, and just don't stop. Whatever you do. I remember one of the things you told me, and I know this would be fine to repeat, so I'm not going to be concerned about it. And it was essentially along the line that what they would like is for you to give up the claim and go live with whoever you want to go live with. Just forget about the claim. But
yeah.
I couldn't do that because I really didn't have anyone that I felt like I really wanted to live the rest of my life with. And that was kind of the position I knew I was going to end up being in. So I had to hold on. At the end, I was driving an hour each way just so that I'd have, some place I could stay and still be able to continue working until they were ready to release me through workman's comp. And fortunately, I had very excellent medical care, which made the big difference for me. They give you the choice of either going through federally, they give you a choice of going through their federal doctors or to go through your own doctors. And I happened to have an appointment the next day with my doctor, so I just, fortunately, I feel, chose my doctor. And I think that made it a lot better because I was comfortable with my doctor. I could explain things to my doctor. I just felt very good about that, and my doctor really worked on my behalf. At first I had to go through some hoops to get good medical care, but eventually it got to the point where my doctors were just great. So I was very fortunate with that.
The doctor tends to be on your side. I mean, that's been my experiences because, you usually don't run into, or I never have, and I've never heard of anybody running into trouble with their doctor. they run into the trouble is with the independent medical examiner, which there's no such thing as an independent medical examiner. He's hired by the insurance company. So, unless it's, if there's any way for him to claim that it wasn't done at work, then they will say that, and the problem where you run into is with the non-scheduled injuries. You have one, like if you get your finger cut off, well, then you get this much money and that's it. Now, they can't hardly, if you got a finger when you went to work and you don't when you come home, well, they can hardly claim you didn't do it at work. But something like a back injury or carpal tunnel or, tennis elbow or some of those kind of things, they'll claim that they weren't done at work, you see. So then those are the ones that you need a medical evaluation, and then those are the ones that are more difficult.
Yes, and I do understand their point to a degree too, in the fact that there could be people that are just wanting to have an income for the rest of their life, and they're really not hurt all that bad. And that's one reason I would definitely recommend having very strong medical records behind you so that it's just definite what happened and there just really can't be any arguments about it. I'm talking about have a doctor, someone that you see that's trained in helping people with chronic pain.
Pain management psychiatrist. The reason you see a pain psychologist, psychiatrist, or someone along that line isn't because they think it's all in your head. Rather, it's because they can help you with pain management. They can help you manage your thoughts, because believe me, you're going to have thoughts that tell you that this is never going to get better, it's only going to be worse, and blah, 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 so on and so forth. And these pain psychologists come in really, really helpful. I even took a class through my pain psychologist and found that it was extremely helpful in how I thought about pain. It gives you support and problem solving skills that can decrease your pain. It teaches you what activity is helpful and what isn't. At one point, my pain got so bad, and I wasn't able to take pain medication like so many people can for a long, long time. And so when my pain got at its very worst, I remember having a vision of a rock, and this rock had dripping water on it. See, I've always had very strong will. That rock was my will, and that water dripping was the constant, non-relenting pain eroding my will. So when I saw that vision, I called my pain psychologist and told her what was going on, and she said, now is when you need to get all your ducks in a row and get your helpers ready to go. So she said, I'm calling your doctor myself, and she did. And so then I got more help, and I finally was able to rest better, sleep better, which helped me feel better. My pain management psychiatrist was able to help me with the depression that I was going through due to the changes that were occurring in my life and my psyche. I mean, when you get hurt, it's like a huge chunk of your life, your ego, is gone, because your career, in my case anyway, as a nurse, that was a huge part of who I was. I got up and went to work every day no matter what happened, because I was a nurse. And nurses are trained that you go into work no matter what, unless you are on your deathbed. So I constantly was going to work, and I never took off sick. In fact, my doctor was the one who told me, you cannot in good faith go in to work today. And so it was because of my doctor's order that I wasn't able to continue my work.
And I do know that sometimes you can have doctors who don't think, or for whatever reason, they don't seem to understand chronic pain like they should. And really, it's not.
Oh, sure, yeah. You need to have a specialist, somebody who specializes in that area, and usually they'll refer you to one eventually.
That makes the whole.
Well, another thing too is my daughter called me. Somebody she worked with. It was at the medical lab, and they had a centrifuge, I think, and it was heavy, and they needed to unload it. Right. So here the guy hurts his back unloading this centrifuge. And then he goes to the doctor and stuff, and then they denied his claim. You see, so I just told him, I sent him the forms. I says file for a hearing, and so as soon as they got that notice for a hearing, they settled with him. paid his doctor bills and whatever he wanted. It was just, I mean, he wasn't permanently disabled or anything. He just needed to be covered for his time off work and his medical bill and whatever. And so then he called me and he said, this is what they've offered me. Should I take it? I said, well, is that what you want? I mean, and he said, yeah. And so that was the end of it, you see. Another thing too is when I was going to trying to get placement when I got disabled, I went to the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and they assigned me a specialist for finding work for disabled people. And he told me that he's in his whole 25 years or however long he'd been doing it at that time, that he's never actually known for it to go to a hearing. I mean, I'm sure it does, but I mean, in his experience, he's never known it. They'll get right to the door to go in, and then they'll settle. So the thing of it is well, like we've said already, is to just stick with it and don't worry too much about a hearing, because you probably won't have to go to one. Did you have to go to a hearing?
I've never known of anyone either that actually had to go to a hearing. In fact, a worker came up to me and said, have you considered going through temporary disability? And I said, well, I think that's a good idea. You know, I didn't have anything like what is that duct program called? I can't remember.
AFLAC.
Well, many times, if your employer will have short-term and long-term disability, and so you go on that short-term disability through work, you know. And I'm not really sure, exactly how this coincides with workers' comp, because if you're on workers' comp, you'll be on workers' comp. They will pay your wages, one thing and another. But once that runs out, then you can get temporary or permanent disability through work, which eventually will end up on Social Security if you're permanently disabled. But it's kind of a long process, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and
I
then
think
on the
my
Social
personal
Security,
opinion of this is they try to discourage people. So if you have any other options, you know, like if you can go live with your mother, you know, or if you're married and you got a husband and you can take off work and just stay home and not pursue it any further, and then you will do that, you see, and then it won't be money out of their pocket. So that's the people that they're concerned about is themselves, you see.
Yeah, and the bottom line always seems to be money. You know, that's my experience anyway with it. So
their insurance companies, you know, they are, well, all insurance companies, not just workers' comp, you know, they don't want to pay claims if they can get out of it, you know.
Right. Well, I know with federal, once you take the disability retirement, you know, it tends to be more of on a permanent basis. And the first year, I think it is, they give you 60% of what your paycheck would have been. And then I believe it's the second year, the 40% starts. And, of course, by the time you're 62, well, they're going to transfer you to, although you have, you know, it's not necessarily disability. You have to, again, either be qualified for Social Security disability, and I have to go through that myself yet, but I'm going to be going through it very soon. And one of the things that they asked me when I first talked to them was, have you been working for the last 5 years? Well, no, I've been on disability, you know. How could I be working? But I was on federal disability, so that's going to be kind of interesting. I have an appointment October 2nd, so they can determine all that and which one they're going to put me on. So, you know, I'll have the age.
Well, I've been through that, too, as far as that's another issue. I mean, filing for Social Security. If you're filing for Social Security because you're disabled, they're going to want to turn you down. I filed when I was first disabled, and then they turned me down. And then this is another thing. I mean, you don't really know what's going on. So then that's when I went through the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. I did get a job, but I couldn't hold a job. I filed again, and then I finally got the disability. But then my wife, who had dementia at the time, we filed for her, and she was declined here, and she was way worse shape than me, you know, and I had to jump through a bunch of hoops to get her to qualify. I actually called Tammy Baldwin's office, and I'd called them earlier, and they kind of were monitoring the situation, and when she was declined, I called them, and I don't know what they did, but then she got qualified for Social Security.
Oh, boy.
So,
yeah, that's kind of what I had to go through with federal was, I was in touch with my senators because of the fact that I've always been very active with the military and for the veterans and such. And so I called every time I would hear, which I did hear, I had a good line of communication. So I would call them to make sure that they were aware of the death of a soldier. And they would always fly the flag then at half mast.
It was just kind of a double check to make sure that they contacted the governor's office and the governor was aware that a soldier had died. Once in a while they didn't have the orders and to fly the flag half-mast yet, so they'd make sure and get those, and the flag would always fly at half-mast then.
I got to know them pretty good, and I, like you, talked with them, and they told me, if you have any trouble, you let us know. So I did tell the hospital I was working with that I was in touch with them, and I needed my pay, and if they weren't able to pay me what I was supposed to have from the beginning, I couldn't live on peanuts. I would let them, the federal, no.
Like they say, you have that weird lifestyle. It demands food and shelter, right?
Exactly. You have to eat, you need to have a roof over your head, so.
Yeah.
It was really crazy.
Well, sometimes, too, the workers' comp office, the government office, don't talk to your employer, don't talk to your the insurance company, but the government office itself sometimes will be helpful, tell you what you can do and what you can't do. And,
right.
I wouldn't look to them for a lot of assistance, but at least you might get some. The thing of this is like they say, and too, don't leave a stone unturned. Look in every direction you can and try to get assistance. And they had some of these groups where they had there was a room full of sometimes too people are mealy-mouthed. They won't give you an answer because they're afraid or they might be under some kind of a gag order. There's certain things that they can tell you by law and certain things they can't. But then it's helpful too. I don't know if there's such a thing as a support group, but there were these groups. It's been a while ago. It's been probably almost 20 years ago now. But there were these groups where there was these people there, and they were talking to this professional. I can't remember exactly who he was now, but there must have been 30 people in there that had gotten the runaround one way or the other from workers' comp, you see, and from the insurance. It's good if there's any way to contact somebody who's been through it once, that's just not some kind of a professional that to give you the straight scoop,
right.
Like I'd been through it, so I was able to tell you what I knew anyway.
And that really helped me so much because I really didn't know what to do, and I felt stuck in a position that I didn't choose. I sure didn't want to be hurt,
sure.
And to this day, I would love to go back to nursing if I just could, But unfortunately, it seems those days are over for me because of the chronic pain situation that I didn't choose to live with, And I think that's one thing. One of the people that was hurt on the job, also where I was and was still working, she had injured her knee pretty bad. And she told me, she said, people don't realize, she said, I've talked to a lot of people and they don't realize that this pain doesn't stop when you go home. It's 24/7. You don't get sleep. You don't get, a lot of the things that your body needs, and yet you have to keep going and, just keep going no matter what. So there were days I did have to call in because I just couldn't go, but I would drag myself one way or another. And I remember one of the social workers there, he was actually the director. And it was right around, I think it was Christmas, must have been right around Christmas when I had surgery, and I was finally up walking without a cane, and he saw me and he said, "Is that really you?" Because I'd had to use canes to drag myself around, and he said, "I remember you dragging yourself around, you couldn't even walk." And he said, "That's all I need for Christmas, is seeing you up walking." And that made my day, too, to know that he was very kind to me when I was there. I worked in their department for a while, too, on light duty, so I got around pretty well in the hospital. That was one thing about being injured. I got to know different parts of the hospital very well that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So that light duty, when you go on light duty on your job, it really does change your job title. Not title. My title was still RN, but your job description quite frequently. I know mine went from being a nurse on really being very busy, extremely busy, to the point that, we got hurt. It was short-staffed that night, and very heavy acuity, much higher care patients than we really should have had on our floor to begin with. We did have proper lifting equipment, but nobody could use it because we only had like 4 nurses for the entire floor and no assistants. And that was quite a few patients to handle. People couldn't stop. You were on your own to help those patients. You couldn't use the lifting equipment because it required 2 people. So I know a lot of people
there's
did
another
get
point
hurt
I
there.
want to make here when you were talking about they put you on light duty. And if they try to cut your pay, if they try to put you in a job that it pays less because there's less work, well, then you can get the difference of that from workers' comp. If you're making, I'm just going to make numbers up. If you're making $15 an hour on your job, and then they try to put you in the one that makes $12, well, then you can get that $3 an hour from workers' comp. A lot of people don't know that. Another thing too is if they put you on light duty and your employer won't let you come back to work, you can file for unemployment. If they say we got no light duty work for you, well, then you can go file for unemployment. And some people don't know that.
They had light duty positions for me, but they were changing me in all kinds of different departments, which I didn't mind at all. I felt like I learned a lot, but still, it wasn't what I was
there's
hired
another
for.
thing too that you kind of mentioned here a little bit, and this is another thing that you get from employers and co-workers and that you're faking, that you're putting on. And you see, you can fool a doctor, but you can't fool them. Well, I talked to some doctors and chiropractors too about that, and they can tell if somebody's faking or not. You don't just go to the doctor and tell it. They got no way to tell if you're faking, and then you can go. So I'm not saying that it's never done, but or it's never tried, but I don't think it's ever succeeded for very long. A doctor says, well, if a guy comes in and says he's hurt, it's hard to not give him a couple of days off of work. But if he's really not hurt, he just can't go on, you know what I mean? You can't fake your way through the whole thing. It just doesn't work. And because the doctors aren't fools. They know if somebody's pulling their chain or not.
Right. In my particular situation, it was the doctor who told me that, nurses are crazy. They've been trained from the beginning. Whatever you do, you show up for work. It doesn't matter if you're sick, whatever. We need you. We're short-staffed. You've got to be there. So unless you're on your deathbed as a nurse, 9 times out of 10, you're just going to be there. Some jobs you can kind of slack off and call off sick if you just have whatever situation come up. In nursing, it's a lot harder to do that. And so you're trained not to ever miss a day, And so here you are in the middle of...
We are going to take a break for station identification, but we will return as soon as we pay some bills, and just can't wait to talk more about this very interesting subject with Terry. So hang on there. We'll be back in just a bit.
Yeah, we gotta save our country or we'll eat ourselves alive. It's when we stick together, that's the way we will survive. It's honest junkie publics working hard across our land. We've seen the worst, we're still the best. We're all Americans.
Hopefully, you can reach me at Twitter. How can you reach me at Twitter? You'll find me under Flobo. Just hashtag Flobo. There I am. I'm also on iTunes, and you can reach me via email, and I would love to hear from you. And you can reach me on email via flowsfocus at KLRNRadio.com. So please contact me today. Let's get together and do some talking.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
Yeah, we gotta save our country or we'll eat ourselves alive. It's when we stick together, that's the way we will survive. It's honest junkie publics working hard across our land. We've seen the worst, we're still the best, we're all Americans.
Welcome back. Hey, Terry, they're back. All right, welcome back. We are discussing workman's comp today, so grab a seat and listen in.
Pete, I remember when I first got put on light duty, there was a situation where I felt like, I felt bad because I was on light duty. I was on the main nursing floor position that I'd been hired in, department, etc. And I could not do any lifting, so I was put on as a more or less the nurse that had to take orders and do nothing else. That was all I could do. And it was I felt bad for the other nurses because they didn't know if I was faking or not, but then they knew me, so they knew I couldn't be. And then the other thing was, it wasn't fair to them because the way that worked was the employees had to make up the difference of having an actual nurse on the floor. In other words, I counted in the staffing of the day as actual being able to do everything that a normal nurse would do. And that wasn't fair because I couldn't do everything. All I could do was sit there and take orders and give it to the nurses, That wasn't what we did on that floor. But yet I had to be counted in the staffing. So it wasn't fair to them either, and I felt bad about that. So
another thing, though, too, is that you shouldn't accept any work that's outside of your restrictions because sometimes they'll try to put you, like they did that with me and at work, and then I told the foreman, I says, I can't do this. It's outside of my restrictions. I says, I don't think it's outside of my restrictions. Yeah. I says, you get a copy of my restrictions because they had them. And I says, and then you get the union steward in there. So he did, and he went in the office, and he says, it says that I can't do whatever it is they were making me do. How often does it say that? Never. I says, so how often is never, you see? So they didn't like me because then too, they kind of shot themselves in the foot too, because I came with some restrictions and they didn't like them. They weren't detailed enough or something. So I went back to the doctor, and that just that just, doctor got PO'd. Well, it was a nurse, it wasn't a doctor. And then they really wrote a bunch of restrictions down and spelled them out and one thing and another. So actually they made it worse for themselves. And, a lot of times you're going to, well, apparently you didn't have too much trouble from your employer, but a lot of times you'll get
in other areas
from your,
as far as them losing paperwork, my pay. But as far as I did have a little bit of, I think I had an issue once or twice of them trying to get me to do things outside my scope. But again, I was like you and just said, well, the doctor said I can't do that, and my restrictions say that. So then they didn't bother me from that point on. So, I do know what you're talking about.
I guess,
there,
like you said, losing paperwork, that's another thing too. You get something if in your grubby little hand, you make a copy of it, and or ask for a copy of it, another point is important too. Like one time I signed a release that they could get medical records, you see. So here they went to the hospital where I was born. I don't even know how they found that out. And they got records from birth on.
Oh my goodness.
Trying to dig something up that they could blame this on, So the next time I had a claim, and then they wanted me to sign that. I says, I'm not going to sign that. I says, you're getting information from my doctor and on this particular injury, and you don't need anything else. So I'm not going to sign that. And then the guy, he didn't like it, but then I didn't sign it. And so they didn't go back and do that again. And we were at a union meeting, and the lawyer was there telling us about workers' comp. This wasn't training at the UW. And she said, well, you have to sign that. Right away, my hand went up, and I told her that story. I said, I didn't sign it. And they didn't go and dig my records up from when I was born 50 years ago,
Gee.
So she said, she just kind of shrugged and said, well, okay. So,
Now, you were in the union working at one point, is that right, Terry, or do I not understand correctly with that? I thought so, yeah. Yeah, so did you find, it sounds like the union wasn't particularly helpful for you, though. Was that the case when you were hurt?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you go and talk to your steward and the business agent and these kind of people, they tend to not be kind of very helpful. Although the business agent is probably more helpful than like your steward or something. They actually sent me to this school for workers, and they did have some seminars at our conventions and at our training sessions about it too. So they were probably the people who helped you the most, So if you're in a union, then you need to take as much advantage of that as you can, and then don't be put off by them either, because some of them they don't want to. Their job's easy if they don't have to do it. You see, so you might have to get on them too about it, or talk to somebody else higher up. Don't give up until you get an answer from them.
So if you have a union, should you yourself then go see them?
I beg your pardon?
Or should they be contacted? Okay, when you get hurt on the job and you have a union there, that was something I was very unclear on, because we just got our union in, barely got it in at the time that I was injured. And I don't even think they had the workers all totally in place yet. So they gave me a little hope. That was about it at that point in time. But for a person that is a member of the union, they should go to the union, correct? And then talk with the union steward, and then take it from there. Okay, I just want to clarify that, because they themselves should be the ones to make an appointment with them, make sure they do that.
Right. And the first thing you do is you report the injury as soon as it happens. And like you might not know that you've been injured. I mean, you might like pull a muscle, and then you not think nothing of it, and then the next morning you can't get out of bed. You see, So it's a good idea, even if you don't think it's that bad, to report it. And if it doesn't amount to anything, then it doesn't amount to anything. But if it does, then you've covered your 6 o'clock there. And although if you don't report it right away, it isn't necessarily that you're done. But I mean, it's just makes it easier if you try to comply with all of this stuff. See, because I had something that I said it was a cumulative. It was over a period of time. There's such a thing as a cumulative injury. So you weren't injured on one day. It took 6 months for the injury to be disabling or debilitating.
The donut can wear out if it's in the back. So yes, I know about that part too.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
they say. Yeah, mine
Well,
was both.
another thing too, nurses, back trouble in nurses, that's kind of real common thing.
Yes. Yeah,
and not
it's very
only nurses,
common.
but
And
anybody
people
like
don't realize
aides or
how common it
anybody
is. They
who's
sure don't tell you that in nursing school.
In that position,
Yeah, that's something that, it's a hazard. They really are getting better now, and I know the reason that they're getting better is they have lost so much money with nurses who have been injured. So now they're trying, and there's such a nursing shortage all over, and that's not making it easier. They're getting lifting equipment in place, and as much as they can, they're trying to fix the staffing. I know they did it where I was working at. They were trying to do that. And another difference that they were making was they were hiring a lot more new nurses straight out of school, which is good and bad. They don't have any experience as a nurse, but yet they are strong, they are younger, and, they can learn from the experienced nurses,
and
as long
there.
as there are experienced nurses there. The unit I was on was getting so they only wanted to hire new graduates, because they were afraid that the older ones would get hurt. But yet if they did that, they would lose the voice of experience. Who's going to teach these young ones? There's so much more to learn than what you learn in nursing school. And everything has changed since I've been there. Even the form of charting, I guess it takes twice as long. They have a new form of documentation now, which is very computer detailed. So now instead of often calling the doctors, they go to the computers instead. And it's pretty detailed now. I mean, I used to say I did an hour of paperwork for every hour of nursing that I did. Then it turned into, from what I'm hearing now, 2 hours of paperwork for every hour of patient care, which isn't as it should be. But I don't know, maybe that's a big thing for nurses, is being aware of how many aides are available to help you with the lifting in particular, and definitely finding out what the patient-to-nurse ratio is before you start a job,
Well, another thing though too is I think that across the board, employers generally are trying to become more ergonomically, whatever the word would be, make sure that the people aren't injuring themselves, by, you were saying, lifting equipment or whatever, like here in Madison, they got these garbage cans, and I'm sure this is pretty much universal too. And then the one guy instead of two guys on the truck, it just has this arm come out and it lifts it up. And then, before the two guys had to jump out of the truck and dump the garbage, and then they had to jump back in the truck. And that's a lot of in and out, up and down. It's a lot of movement, and it's very prone to injury. Now this guy's sitting in the truck with the operating this hydraulic arm, well, then there's almost no chance of injury. So it only makes sense for everybody.
Definitely,
I mean, it's a benefit for the company. It's a benefit for the worker. That's for everybody.
Yes, that is huge. And they're trying to go more and more to computerized systems, which in the shape of nurses that have to do a lot of lifting. I did total patient care when I got injured, and I loved total patient care, but doing all the lifting was just not very possible when we had such short staffs. Of course, we didn't always have short staffs, but if you happen to work on the weekends or the holidays, you could definitely plan on short staffs. And of course, patients didn't like to be in the hospital on the holidays, but on the weekends that couldn't be prevented. And there's not a nurse alive that doesn't work some weekends. I mean, unless she's doing something outside of the hospital setting, most likely. So I really shouldn't say that.
Or on a holiday or
some,
something like that. I mean, if somebody has to be there,
Exactly. And I wouldn't trade what I did for anything. I'd go back in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity to do so. But as it is, I'm in Madison now because that's where I've always had my care, between Madison and Milwaukee. And so, I go to Milwaukee. They do the procedures that I need, and Workman's Comp still takes care of that for me, thank goodness. So once you get on the system...
Do you keep track of your mileage?
I haven't, and I've thought about that. I'm not even sure. Is that something that I could do? Should I be doing that?
Yes, they reimburse you for your mileage to and from treatment care. Sometimes it don't pay. Like in town, you drive 2 miles to that doesn't count. It doesn't really pay.
Right.
But I mean, if you're traveling long distances, like from Madison to Milwaukee, for example, that's whatever that is. That's how far is that? 70 miles or something. So that you would one way, so that would be like 140 miles, and I don't know how much they give you per mile, but whatever it is. I don't know. I'm going to make up a number, 20 cents per mile, whether you've got reimbursed or 30 cents, whatever it would be. It's something like that, I think. And so you'd get whatever that is. I'm challenged when it comes to doing arithmetic in my head, but that'd be like
I know that feeling. Rob could tell you in a heartbeat, but I'm not.
It'd be like $40, and so that's money that you don't have to take out of your own pocket, and they're not going to tell you about that. They're not going to volunteer that information to you. If you don't put in a claim, they're not going to tell you that you should. And besides, if you put it in and you don't get paid, well, you're not going to get paid if you don't put it in. So I mean, it's worth the effort.
It doesn't hurt, does it? I should do that. But what particular form do you use to do that? Do you know? I mean, do you call workman's comp for the
no,
form?
I don't know anymore. But you just you got the verification that you were at the hospital or the therapy center, wherever it is you went. And you on that date, and you come from your house. I'm not sure how you file for that, but I have to beg your pardon because it's been 20 years since I've dealt with somebody.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I don't know if you actually need a particular form or not. Just make sure you keep track of it and send it in and say these are the miles that I've driven to my therapy this month or this week or however often you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to turn in from my house, though. That would be a very long trip from Iowa to Wisconsin. And truthfully, they don't have the same type of pain clinic in Iowa near me that I have been able to find and locate as what they do. My care has been established for years and years there. So, they know me well. They know what I need.
How far is that?
Pardon? From Iowa to Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I think to Madison to Iowa, our place is 300 miles. So,
there you go.
Each time we make a trip, we're traveling 600. But I don't think they would.
Said too, there is no place there.
Right.
And this is where this is the people you've been established. They know your situation, and they've treated you for how many years. And so the only reason that you would change is if there was some absolute dire need. To change.
Exactly.
If they don't cover your,
that was similar,
if they won't cover your mileage, that ain't enough to change. That ain't reason enough to change. You follow what I mean?
And nowadays, with the crackdown on pain medications, in general for any type of narcotic, that would also require me to go to a pain clinic. My own doctor, told me if I ever did need something, she could not give it to me because based on the situation in Iowa, evidently, with pain medication, that it would be classified as a narcotic. She could be put into jail
for
that.
Well, that's all of them, just about, anyway.
Boy.
Anything that's powerful and would actually deal with the pain is a narcotic.
Right, exactly. So, I'm better off to go to a pain clinic where if I need something, they can give it to me. They've done my stimulator, they've done my batteries, all that.
Yeah.
So
they're all opioid.
Yeah, and I would prefer not to take anything. I mean, if I don't have to, there's no way I will take something. But if I have to, I'll take the lightest that I can, just to keep me up and moving. So. I mean,
well, part of what's wrong with those medications is I take them like short term. Because they're no good long term, because you build up a tolerance to them, and they become ineffective. And one doctor told me that you have some sort of I don't know how he explained it, but once you take enough of them, you doesn't matter how many more you take, they're not going to be effective anymore because you
and it does depend on the medication with that too. Which type of medication we're talking about.
In your
there
body
are some that don't have that filling effect, but some do have that. There's some medications, in that narcotic class that do not have that filling effect. But Demerol is one that definitely has the filling effect. Where once you take that, you can't take any more. It won't help you anymore.
It's ineffective. It doesn't do anything.
Morphine. It's not morphine. It's oxymorphone. And that one, I don't think it has a ceiling effect like Demerol does. I'd suggest anyone take the absolute minimum that they have to have. And I can tell you one other thing about people that are in pain, because most people who get disability are in pain, is there are two types of nerve fibers, I should say, that control all pain issues. This is what I learned as a pain advocate manager, at which I took the classes for after I was injured. I was offered to take the classes, so I did. So when I became a pain advocate manager, I learned that there's two types of nerve fibers that control most pain, and one of them is a long nerve fiber, one of them is a short nerve fiber. If you have the achy type of pain, you want to take something like aspirin or Tylenol or, whatever you can take that's equivalent to that, and of course you want to consider your medical situation, because if you have a bleeding stomach, you don't want to be on a medication that's going to cause even more bleeding with your stomach, so you're not going to be taking ibuprofen, for
aren't
example.
Most
and
of
if you have
those
liver
NSAIDs
issues,
that way?
you're
Aren't
not going to take
they're
Tylenol,
blood thinners?
Pardon? So the short fibers are the ones that cause the achiness, issues like that. Now, the long nerve fibers are generally when the chronic pain's getting involved, and that's the real sharp, stabbing, burning, real nerve-related type pain, And that is the type you need to take something more stronger for. Either you take a narcotic, or either you take, there's been a lot of advocacy, and I know people have very mixed feelings on this, but there's been a lot of advocacy for marijuana use for pain issues. And also another thing, there's other issues, there's other ways that you can control the pain. Like I have a electric stimulator in my back. And that's one of the reasons I really come to this clinic, is because they're the ones that put it in. They're the ones that change the batteries. They have very good management of my pain stimulator. Now, this does not have any medicine in it. What it does is it actually sends electric messages to my spine, and it overrules the pain messages, so that my pain is better controlled that way. And one thing that they just came out with, my doctor had mentioned it to me when I had my last nerve ablation. They do that for me too, from my back. And that's generally once a year that I have that done. So I have to do it to each side, and I just finished that. And when it gets to be time, I definitely know it's time to do it. But at any rate, one thing they came out with the stimulator.
When it's time to do that. Well, I understand too. I've never been through it, but I understand too that they teach like meditative type
absolutely.
Techniques to manage the pain.
Yeah, I did that a lot with my hospice patients, so definitely. And one thing that with my stimulator, they just now I mentioned the electrical currents, and sometimes those currents that pass through your body, at first they were great for me. Then it got to a point where I can use it for a little while, but then I have to turn it off because I'm feeling more of the electrical current. So then it's not helping me as much. But they just came out with some type of high frequency where you no longer feel the electrical currents, but yet it overrides the pain messages. So that's the next step they're going to take with me when I come back to see my doctor. So I'm kind of looking forward to that one. So
yeah.
I think that will be great.
I can well imagine.
That'll be super great. So, but I wanted to ask you on workman's comp, you mentioned that you should file immediately with your supervisor papers, even if you don't think you're hurt that bad. Make sure you file. It might be for a nurse, make sure even if it's a needle stick, you have to file. I mean, there's no choice on that. But it could be something else, like you said, like even just what feels like a sprained muscle. You better beware, make sure you file. Make sure you, file the papers that you were injured.
It
doesn't mean you're going to be taking disability, but then at least you will have that option if it becomes serious. Don't file. You won't have that option. And you have a limited time. File those papers. I don't remember how many, I know you've got to file those The first one related to the incident immediately, but I know you've got a limited time to file for disability related to an injury and that type of thing too. I don't know how much time you have, but that's something people should be aware of, is the time factor too. So
right, but if you're in an ongoing situation to where you haven't been released from workers' comp, because then they'll only cover you for so long, no matter what you do. You're only covered so long by workers' comp, and I mean, on your total disability. I can't go to work and I got to be at home. Well, we're going to pay you, and then until your treatment's over.
Exactly.
Well, then they'll tell you, well, you've reached your healing plateau. In other words, you're as good as you're going to get, so we're not going to pay anymore. But you still might be in trouble,
Yeah.
But that's what, and, like we were saying about independent medical examiner, their diagnosis and analysis and reports aren't really very useful from a medical point of view. They're just so the insurance company can weasel out of the claim.
Exactly. Well, fortunately, one thing that and this is something that people should be aware of too, is if you can, through your job, I know it's a lot harder these days, but make sure that you have some type of good insurance. And as a federal worker, that was one thing that I did have available, was many types of insurance to choose from. I happened to choose Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I have had workman's comp tell me that they could not pay for something. I would call Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they said, and this happened, the first time it happened was when I had to do my back surgery. And so when workman's comp refused to do it, I called Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they said, you need it. The doctors have said you need it. You go get it. We'll pay for it, and we will follow up with workman's comp. And that's
really another
helpful,
thing, right? You've made a very valid point there. If your own insurance will pay for it, go for it, and then they can fight with workers' comp for it, but you've had your procedure done that you need.
Yeah, and do file with workman's comp first. I can't stress that enough, because they need to say no, and then you can have Blue Cross Blue Shield follow up if they say they won't do it. Blue Cross Blue Shield, or whoever your insurance is. If you have a good insurance company, they will follow through with it. So that's
but you did make a pretty good point there, because now with so many people, with temporary employees and part-time employees and all the rest of that stuff, they don't have any benefits. It's by law they have to have workers' comp. They have to have that by law, but a lot of times you got nothing else.
Exactly. And it is helpful if you do have insurance. I mean, it really is. I know a lot of people don't these days, and there's they had to have workman's comp or be fined for it when Obama was in, but with President Trump, I'm actually glad that he stopped that necessity for insurance. I mean, to have to pay for something that you don't have because you can't afford it to start with, that doesn't make sense to me. Something's got to be done for people so that they can have it. I mean, and President Trump seems like he's really been pushing the buttons to try to repeal Obamacare, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So I guess we just have to wait and see.
Well, I know that's one thing that Trump said that I did agree with. He says the Republicans have been saying for so long that they need to repeal and replace Obamacare. Well, now's your chance. Do it.
Exactly. So, and why these Republicans are blocking him so bad on that. I say, personally, my own viewpoint is vote him out of office. You do have an option of what you can do, about that. So vote him out of option, put somebody in there that will do what they're supposed to do as a Republican. So, that's
well, you
my
see,
own,
that's kind of the problem here, though, too, like with all this union busting. You see, this is what it's all about. They talk about right to work, and that's right to work is also the right to hire. I don't have to hire union people. I can hire non-union people, and I don't have to pay them benefits, and I don't have to pay a living wage in one thing and another, you see, and they don't have any rights. They don't have any union representation. A lot of times the unions are the only friends that the working people have,
Right. Exactly. and if they don't have that, it's a lot harder on them. That's for sure. Absolutely.
Yes.
I fully agree with that. Great.
To reiterate, I think the most important thing is to file with everybody that you can and cooperate with. They want you to go to this doctor, go to that doctor. They want you to go through this, because I've heard people that they wouldn't go. They said, well, it wasn't helping, so I didn't go. Well, then right away, workers' comp says, well, we offered him this treatment, he didn't take it, so he's, that's his fault,
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And like we said, to keep track of, and well, you can kind of tell too. If it looks like you're going to be getting a hard time, then you really got to make sure that you keep copies of all the paperwork. You keep track of who you talked to and what was talked about, et cetera, et cetera. That's probably the most important thing, really.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't stress that enough. Just as you said, definitely keep track of everything. Jump through whatever hoops they make you jump through, because in the end, because you jump through those hoops, you will get your workman's comp, and you will get disability.
You will.
But
you're almost,
got to go through
if you've got a legitimate claim and you pursue it, it might take a while, but you will get it through.
Absolutely. And it's very painful. It's very painful. And yes, it's a pain you don't need when you're living with pain already. But if you stick it out.
It's frustrating. It's an ordeal. Just dealing with them is an ordeal,
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's something that people don't need when they're already hurt as bad as they are, and they're dealing with that, and then they have to deal with this too. It's like, I described it one time as being in a ocean. All of a sudden, you're in a black ocean. It's nighttime, and there's no light around. You cannot see anything. These waves are taking you over, and you can't escape. You're in the middle of it all. I mean, there's just barely enough room where you can catch breath once in a while to keep going, and that's it. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and going where?
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
I'm staying afloat, but where the hell am I going,
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Very stressful, but you will get there. I think I just wanted to get the word out there so bad, because I know how difficult it is. And people, when they're hurt, they really feel like there's no options for them, but there are. And, just follow through with what they want you to do. That's what you're going to need to do. And they will tell you very clearly, in no uncertain terms, what they want you to do. Some of it will seem like silliness to you. Do it. And definitely keep all your paperwork. Don't lose anything. Like Terry said, keep all your phone call information, write a synopsis down of what happened, when it happened, etc. And if there's ever any way that, I know that I can help you, certainly, you guys know how to contact me, so please do so. And I can contact Terry, and I'll see what we can get for information for you, because I don't want anyone feeling like they have to go through that alone. If there's anybody that can
absolutely.
help them.
If there's anybody I can help, I'll be certainly willing to do so.
I sure appreciate that, Terry, and I'd love to have you back again as a guest sometime.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much for having me on here. I appreciate the time to bout off here a little bit.
Well, I appreciate your input. I think it's been very, very helpful for many people today. So thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate you. And I will be talking with you soon, too, as a friend. So take care and have a great day.
Okay, well, you too, and thank you again. Yep, bye now.
Okay, bye.
We are stopping to pay bills a little bit late here. But don't worry, my good friendies. We'll catch up in no time at all.
Yeah, we gotta save our country or we'll eat ourselves alive. It's when we stick together, that's the way we will survive. It's honest junkie publics working hard across our land. We've seen the worst, we're still the best, we're all Americans.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a description card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Sure, if you do have any workman comp questions for either Terry or me, do contact me. And you know how to reach me. I'm hoping it's Flo@KLRNradio.com, or you can do Flo's Focus at KLRNradio.com. And you can even go to Twitter and look up Flobo, and you'll find me there too. So just find me and contact me with any questions. We'd love to be able to help you out any way that we could. And we know going through workman's comp issues, especially if you are having pain in the midst of all that, is not a fun time. So please feel free to contact us anytime. That's something that both of us can help you on. I'm going to take a little detour here, just covering some of the psychosocial situations that happen. And they happen generally when you're working towards getting workman's comp, or you are getting workman's comp because you've already been injured. Well, it's not easy. You get this sudden package that you really don't want. And it says something like this. No, it's never going to get better. Forget it. It's not just a pain. It's also a massive pain in the arse, if you know what I mean there. So it's no surprise that anger is an emotion that's so common among people with chronic pain. It's not just the physical pain that makes you angry. How you think about that pain also plays a huge part. We get frustrated, and I've seen this time after time with hospice patients. It's not the dying that's bothering them. They're getting frustrated because they feel they can no longer do the things we want to do in life because of our pain. Anger and resentment can build up if we blame others or external circumstances for causing our problems. And then there's the injustice of it all. Why in the world do we have to deal with this crap? Struggle every day when others are fine. I'm sure you can think of other reasons too. By letting your pain make you angry, you are giving yourself more problems. For example, by becoming angry, you are highly likely to increase that pain. And sadly, your close relationships are likely to suffer. And this is actually really important for your health too, because being in a supportive relationship has been shown to be great for the long-term well-being and quality of life of a person with chronic pain. I mean, we all need support and love, right? And that's especially true when we're in pain. Unfortunately, one of the things that tends to go with this is because we are hurting and we are fighting within ourselves because of the pain, we push those people that we love the most the furthest from us. As the old saying goes, we hurt the ones we love the most. Studies have shown that the more angry a person with chronic pain becomes, the less support they receive from their partner. And this isn't just bad news for us. It's also been found partners of angry people with chronic pain felt more sad, anxious, and angry among themselves when they were around their partner. Isn't that sad? The one person that you really want to love and you want to share life with, but because of your anger within yourself, which could be justified at times, no doubt, but still, it pushes them away from you. And not just that, they were also more prone to depression, which is really, really sad when you think about it. It's an issue that we all need to deal with. Angry is not only likely to lead to more physical pain and less support, it's also often damaging to the people you love, which we know is an issue we must deal with. If you want to learn more about why chronic pain causes anger and how it can stop affecting your relationships, I can definitely talk about that, boy. Howdy. The good news, though, is that there are 3 proven psychological methods you can use that can stop this anger before it develops. These are 1, reconstructing how you think about your pain experience. 2, learning to accept the pain you feel rather than fighting against it. I am not saying by any means that you are saying, oh, pain, you're welcome here. No, you're not saying that at all. 3, distracting your attention away from the pain. Don't worry, these aren't complicated. They are simply shifts in thinking that anyone can do. And I'm here to tell you, if you've never taken a class on pain, take one, because truly, it will change the way you think. Now, what you need to do, if you really want to overcome these barriers, is put on your reconstruction helmet. Am I kidding? Nope, I'm serious. Listen to this quote and see what you think. This is by Brian Tracy, a motivational speaker. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude toward what happens to you. And in that, you will be mastering change rather than allowing it to master you. Don't you feel better when you have your pain under control? And the same thing is true of psychological pain or the need for control of that pain. Putting on your reconstruction helmet is really using cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. And it really isn't scary. It might sound scary, but it really isn't. It's a process of identifying negative thought processes about pain that cause you to become angry and challenging and reconstructing them in a more positive and accurate way. The idea is that emotional and behavioral problems begin in the mind. And anyone who's been pushed over the edge by chronic pain is going to have that package arrive with those negative thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes. It's almost like there's a little monster inside your head that's saying, no, you're not going to get better. Beep, 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 beep. And it actually almost can be talkative to you at times, telling you, but don't listen to it. You can fight back. You see, the problem is that a lot of times these negative thoughts and beliefs aren't accurate. Take pain. Now, we all share beliefs about pain that we learn as we grow up. For instance, we learn that feeling pain is a sign of harm that needs addressing. So if you put your hand on a hot stove, what's your brain going to tell you? Move it, hurry. And it definitely tells you there's a problem there. However, this is not the case when your pain becomes chronic. At that point, chronic pain is just there. It's not a sign of immediate danger. It's not a sign of, we have to deal with this right away. But because our brains are so programmed to respond automatically to all pain, urgent, consistent chronic pain signals can lead you to develop an overly negative outlook towards it, such as having horrible thoughts, where you always imagine a worst case scenario for the pain you are feeling, no matter how unlikely this is. Like, I'm never going to get better, and this is only going to get worse. Overgeneralizing when thinking about your pain, which can lead you to not taking care of yourself. For instance, I've tried everything to fix my pain and nothing has worked. So what's the point in trying something else? That something else may be just the thing that will fix your pain, or at least help you control it better. Your pain becoming your sole focus, which leaves you unable to recognize or appreciate the good things in your life. And it's very easy for that to happen because pain can be so overwhelming. And it's not something that you asked for, expected, and wanted by any means. These thoughts, though, regarding pain are all unhealthy and will only result in making you feel angry and helpless. However, they are not a true reflection of your actual chronic pain situation. So, replace these harmful and inaccurate thoughts with positive ones that more accurately describe the situation. By doing this, you'll develop a more positive attitude, which allow you to be able to better manage your chronic pain and gain control over the levels of pain that you feel. It's a good way to reduce anger, and that is really healthy too. And remember, that anger is part of that package. An analysis of 50 studies covering 1,640 patients with anger issues found that patients treated by using these methods to control pain did better than 76% of untreated patients when it came to reducing their anger levels. And believe me, I know it works because, like I said, I took a class on pain management. And not just pain management. I also did take a class on pain management. I became a pain management advocate. But I took a class regarding pain itself with other individuals who had pain. And I had some excellent teachers in the class, and I learned a whole lot. Both classes, both in the professional class and also in the individual class. So remember, it's worth giving a try. So what you're going to want to do is when that monster starts talking, listen, but don't listen believing. But what you want to do is identify those negative thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes, because that monster is telling you what your thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes are that you hold about your pain. Then challenge those thoughts using evidence and logic to see how true they are. If that monster starts telling you your pain's never going to get better, tell it you are a liar because I've already done blah, 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 whatever it is. Maybe you had a stimulator placed and you know at that point in time your pain became better. Okay, there's evidence. Use that evidence and use logic to say, yes, it can get better, even if you haven't had any hardcore evidence yet. Look at other people's evidence and say, yes, it can get better. Use the evidence to reframe these thoughts in a more positive and accurate way. So when you become aware of your negative thoughts and emotions, remember, they can leave you feeling trapped and helpless when it comes to living with your chronic, which is a major cause of anger and frustration. So next time you're angry and you're in pain, try to identify your thought processes. These negative thoughts can be hard to pinpoint, and when they become automatic, you may not even realize they are there. But you need to be aware of them as they happen if you are going to be able to challenge them and reconstruct them in more positive ways. One way some folks do this is to keep a pain diary. For a couple of weeks, note down both your anger and pain levels at 4 set intervals during each day. 4 is a good number because that kind of gives an overall picture of what's happening throughout the course of your day. Alongside each note, also write down what you were doing at the time, what was happening around you, how was your mood, what were you thinking about, and how are you feeling. This is a good way of becoming aware of the thoughts and feelings that may remain invisible to you if you didn't consciously try to observe them. And these are the thoughts that truly, if once they're changed, your anger will also change. So hopefully after a couple of weeks, you will have a list of these thoughts and an idea of the beliefs and attitudes you hold towards pain. Keeping a pain diary also comes with other benefits. It can make you aware of events and situations that may trigger that pain. Write down how you feel. It's a positive way to release that anger and frustration. Remember that. One study found that chronic patients that kept a pain journal over a 9-week period had greater control over their pain and anger levels than those that didn't. So at least it's a good starting point. And once you're aware of those beliefs, then you can look at them in more detail to see just how accurately they represent your pain situation and challenge those negative thoughts. You can't stop those negative thoughts from occurring, especially those around pain. However, the longer that chronic pain lasts, the longer you are going to need to know what those negative thoughts are and how you can control them, because that's going to be part of controlling your pain issues as well. You can learn to disrupt them by challenging them and choosing a more positive and also accurate way of looking at your pain instead. You don't have to enter into your pain, so to speak, But it's good to be aware of your pain and to be able to perhaps address your pain, if you will. You'd be surprised how often your brain can trick you into thinking things that are simply not true. And because of this, it's so easy to get stuck in ways of thinking that are inaccurate and exaggerated. When your mind starts telling you, it's only going to get worse, it's only going to get worse, say, stop, I know better. And then tell it why you know better. Retrain your mind in how it thinks about pain. You can learn to judge situations more accurately, which will leave you feeling more hopeful and in control rather than angry and frustrated. Negative thoughts need to be challenged by using evidence that disproves them. Therefore, the more knowledge you have about the whole chronic pain experience, the easier it is to challenge them. Knowledge is power here. And the good news is you're already making a start without realizing it. Just by listening about pain and starting to look into other areas about pain, you are beginning to look for facts and learning facts. And you'll see just how unlikely and irrational many of your thought processes about pain are. Forums can be great for you for other reasons too. Forums can be a way that you reach out to others. Maybe you have a support group in person that you can attend, which is basically what mine was, or you can go to a forum. My support group happened to be a teaching support group, and I learned a lot from it. Learned so much from it and really helped me, as I said, to control my pain. You can also find some forums online. There are various places you can find helpful places where others are also expressing their thoughts on pain. So chronic pain can be an isolating illness, but remember, there are areas where you can have a source of inspiration as you listen to others, as you read what others have learned. They give you access to hundreds of people going through similar experiences to you every day when you use some of those forums. So not only can they help you to increase your understanding of your own problem, they're a great place to learn new ways of coping through the experience of others. So wherever you get that from, wherever it is, support group, forum, whatever, it's a good place to go to get it. Plus, they are a source of support and encouragement that you may lack times in your day-to-day life. So once you're armed with all this chronic pain knowledge, it's truly time to put on that reconstruction helmet. Reconstruct your thoughts. Turn the negative into the positive. Be positive and realistic. So now you have a list of negative thoughts from your pain diary, and you know more about how that pain is affecting you and what your thoughts and feelings have been towards it. You've armed yourself now with a wealth of knowledge on chronic pain as well. So how do you go about using that? How do you go about reconstructing those thoughts? But one way to do this is to go through them one by one and replace them with positive coping state. A coping statement is a more positive, rational way of thinking about pain than the negative thoughts you were having. So for example, let's say you're angry because this pain is so bad, I won't make it through the day. Now, having that thought going over and over in your mind is only going to make you feel worse, angry, and frustrated. But is it true? Well, no, because you know you'll make it through the day. Think of all the times in the past when your pain's been at the same level or worse, and yet you still survived and did what you had to do when it looked like nothing was going to get better. Guess what? It did. So you've looked at this and you can prove that that doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Well, I will make it through the day, by golly, and I will get better. So use this knowledge of past experiences to replace the negative thought with a more positive one. Remember, you can think, I've coped with this level of pain before and it always gets better eventually. I'll cope today as well, by golly. And with that thought in mind, you are far more in control than before and less likely to get angry or defensive or any of those other emotions, and you can move away from that nasty package that you receive. Or maybe you're having a woe is me day and you have the following thought going around in your brain, going around and around and around. Why me? Why do I have to suffer this pain while others don't? Now, dealing with chronic pain is awful. Of course it is. We do know that. But thinking along those lines is only going to make you angry and resentful. And when you think about it, are you really, truly the only one struggling out there? Of course not. And truth is, a lot of people have it a lot worse than you do. So change the thought to, there are millions of people out there suffering even worse than me and still coping. I'll be fine. Just that simple shift will stop you feeling helpless, angry, and alone. Or maybe you're having catastrophic thoughts such as, this pain has gotten far worse than usual. That's me done for. It's escalating. It's not going to stop. I'm done for. The end of the world is nigh. But again, through a mixture of past experience and knowledge that chronic pain has peaks and troughs, you can change your thought process to, I'm just having a bad pain day. I've had them before and they'll pass. I'll be feeling better soon. Another example, I'm useless because I can't do such and such like I used to be able to. And I can't do such and such and I can't do such and such. Well, okay, it's time to shift the focus again. You're getting to know this routine here. I'm proud that I can still do X even though I have chronic pain. So for me, what I've learned is don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on what you can do and be glad that you can do it. And those little things that you really want to do, you don't have to take them all on at once. Do a little bit at a time and you will eventually get that project finished. And then there's always that horrible thought of, if I try to do such and such, then my pain will get worse. Maybe I could seriously injure myself. Well, there's the difference between chronic and acute pain. My pain is chronic, not acute. So doing such and such won't injure me further as long as I'm not going beyond my limitations. I just need to pace myself and not overdo things. So what you're doing is you're looking at the anger and frustration that pain is causing in your life, and we are changing the negative package to a more positive package. Go through the negative statements that you have written in your pain diary and challenge and reframe them in this way so they more accurately reflect reality. And you can do a lot more too. Accept your pain to prevent anger. We've talked about that to a degree. The acceptance method argues that by attempting to control your thoughts about pain, you are continually fighting and struggling against them. And these constant struggles can cause you long-term emotional and physical distress. So instead, you need to learn to accept that you will experience pain and the negative thoughts that come with it. But don't allow them to affect you or get in the way of the things you want to do. Easier said than done, right? We know that chronic pain can disrupt our lives. But to live a fulfilling and satisfying life, we can work towards goals that are important to us as a person. That's something that we really want to get done and do the things that matter. And there is some evidence that by accepting pain, rather than trying to reduce or control it, you can continue with the activities you enjoy despite being in pain. One study tested the performance of people with chronic pain over 7 different physical tasks. The group that were using pain acceptance strategies showed a 16% improvement in their performance. However, the group that used pain control strategies showed an 8% decrease in their performance. So you've got a pain acceptance strategy and a pain control strategy. There's a big difference there. This suggests that the people who use pain acceptance strategies had a high tolerance for pain and were better able to persist with activities. So just think of the difference that this kind of thinking could make to your mood and lifestyle. How many times do you put off things that are important to you just because you think pain will be too much to bear? And believe me, I'm preaching to myself when I say this. I'm just sharing the message with everyone else. But to myself, I believe I'm preaching, indeed. This could be anything from attending a friend's wedding, spending time outdoors with your family, being able to work, pursuing a hobby, Okay, a hobbit now. Pursuing a hobby, and sorry, I can't talk there. My tongue decided to take its own little adventure there. Or taking an adventurous holiday like my tongue did. And how angry does it make you when you are stuck at home while everyone else is out there having fun? So, if you could learn to accept the fact that you will feel pain, but not allow it to stop you, wouldn't that be a great thing? This is what the acceptance method is all about. Now, this takes a bit of mental practice, awareness, and flexibility to accomplish. But there are 3 techniques you can use to gain this flexibility, which are acceptance, mindfulness, and life values. Well, we've already talked about acceptance, and of course this concept includes accepting the negative thoughts that occur because of our pain. But accepting your negative thoughts, it means what? It means not giving in to them. It means not letting them reduce you to an angry, self-pitying individual. What it means is observing the thought, allowing it to occur, but keeping it a distance away and allowing it to pass. Thoughts do come and go. They're like clouds, you know. Clouds are in the sky. They don't stay. The same cloud doesn't stay in the sky day in and day out. They come and they go, and that's what thoughts do. They are natural, and you are never going to be free of negative thought unless you actually decide to work at it. And you will always have negative thoughts anyway, as well as positive thoughts. But you can learn to let those negative thoughts go by just like clouds. Accepting these painful thoughts will occur along with your pain, and finding a way to live with them without allowing them to affect your behavior can eliminate the struggle against pain and reduce the anger and frustration that comes with mindfulness. You probably know the routine by now. We'll be back just in a little bit because we need to go pay some of those station bills. See you on the upside.
Friends are quiet angels who somehow make you see the light that's in the darkness before the dawn. And all at once your journey's not so long.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
We're back. Did you miss us? Boy, did I ever miss you. Okay, we're on to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present in the moment. One good way of standing back and distancing yourself from negative thoughts is through being mindful. It is about being aware of what's happening in every moment, but just allowing it to be without making any judgments on it. This way of thinking allows you to step away from your pain and view it from the outside, rather than allowing it to affect you or become a part of you. This can lead you to having a more balanced relationship with your pain, rather than reacting to it in a negative way, which only causes anger and further pain. The importance of mindfulness to the acceptance method has been shown in many studies. In one study, a group of people with chronic pain that practiced mindfulness were more able to accept their pain than another group that were treated with physiotherapy and medication alone. This suggests that being mindful goes a long way in learning to accept your pain experience. Now, mindfulness is not the easiest thing to learn on your own. However, you can learn it. It takes practice, and you can also find places on computer, if you look up mindfulness, that will help. There's also a book that I can recommend, which is called Living Well with Pain and Illness, Using Mindfulness to Free Yourself from Suffering. I mean, it's by a V as in Victor, but it's not Victor. It's something else. It's got a long name, long V name for the first name. And the last name is Birch, B-U-R-C-H. And it is a great introduction to meditation for people with chronic pain. I cannot stress meditation enough. I use meditation with my hospice patients, and also when I was in the pain teaching group, they used meditation for us, and I still have some of those taped, and they are very, very helpful. This particular book is written by someone who has been living with chronic pain for over 30 years. So not just an expert with no actual experience of the condition. This person really understands. Being present in the moment takes lots of practice, but keep at it. The benefits are worth the effort. And identify your life values. Now you have learned how to accept that pain and negative thoughts will happen. You understand that. But how does that help when you are having a bad pain day? When everything is a struggle, how can you distance yourself and carry on regardless? Well, one thing for sure, it's not easy. But the acceptance method is based on the thinking that if the activity you're doing or want to do is important enough to do, you will then override your pain and negative thinking. Well, I know it sounds a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? But look at endurance athletes as an example, like running a marathon or any other endurance, for that matter, endurance athletic procedure. They are constant pain after a certain point. Every fiber in their body is screaming at them to stop. So why do they keep going? And how do they keep going? They know the pain is coming and they accept it when it arrives, but they don't give in to it. Instead, they focus on the important goal that they want to achieve. This goal is so important to them. They have trained for months or years to be where they are now with a chance of achieving it. They expect the pain to come. They know it's going to be there. But you know what? The importance of the goal overrides the pain that their body is feeling. They're accepting the pain, but they're not allowing it to be the main focus or to affect their behavior. If for 1 second they give in to the demands of the pain, they are finished. But they keep going. Pain doesn't stop them from doing what they want to do. Now, this is an extreme example, and sometimes you cannot continue to physically go, but you can keep your mind active. You can find everyday activities where you can become similarly motivated. To do this, you will need to work out what's really important for you and define your life goals. For example, ask yourself, what do you want to achieve in life? Who do you want to become? How do you want your life to be in 5, 10, 15 years' time, whatever? By doing this, you can work out a list of your goals that, if achieved, will give your life meaning and purpose. And once these goals are in place, your day-to-day activities can be viewed as helping you to stay on course to achieving them. This will help you to accept and tolerate the pain when you are attempting an everyday activity, as you will be working towards something much greater. If a life goal is to be active and fun as a grandparent, then an afternoon in the park with the grandchildren will be easier to handle than if you think of it only in terms of how much pain you feel on that day. Or if you want to master a second language so you can retire abroad, you can take on and handle the extra hours and commute to that Spanish class rather than canceling due to feeling in more pain afterwards. And there are also general life skills. Having long-term goals will make it easier to accept your pain and conduct your day-to-day activity. By doing this, you're also focusing on the opportunities in everyday situations rather than feeling negative and self-pitying. And this will help you to stay more active, positive, and in control of your life. And finally, distract yourself from pain. Another technique you can try to lower pain and anger is divert your attention away from it. Immerse yourself in another activity instead. Maybe music helps you. It helps you feel no pain. Then by all means, play music. Bob Marley said one good thing about music: when it hits you, feel no pain. So if Bob Marley music does it for you, or whatever music does it for you, listen to the music and let that pain dissipate. We live in a world where our senses are being constantly bombarded. The sights, smells, and noises of life going on around us is overwhelming, and it's more than we can possibly take in. In psychology, it's said that the brain has a limited capacity processor. Just like a computer, it only has so much space for saving things. So it is with the brain. The brain has a limited capacity processor for dealing with the sensory information around us. Therefore, we have to focus our attention on a small part of the world around us to avoid being overloaded with information. And that small part does not have to be the pain issues. You've already dealt with those. This happens both consciously and unconsciously. Our brain will prioritize what it feels is the important information and focus our attention on whatever we believe is the most important, whatever our brain feels is the most important. And when our body feels pain, the brain has a tendency to mark this as important information. That makes sense, right? Because in most cases, feeling pain means trouble of some sort that you need to urgently attend to. But for chronic pain, that's not the case most of the time. So how do you stop these pain signals from taking priority in your brain? One way is by consciously distracting your brain away from the pain by giving it something else to process instead. You need to have a situation where you are using the limited capacity processor in your brain on an activity you enjoy, having no room for the pain signals to get through. In this way, distraction is able to lower the pain levels you feel, and therefore it helps prevent the anger that comes from it. Have you noticed how sometimes you don't notice your pain all that much, but at other times it's all you can think about? Sure, I noticed that my pain tends to temporarily disappear when I'm out socializing with friends. And think about this. So let's say you won a lottery, or let's say your great aunt who you absolutely adore died. Well, okay, which one are you going to feel better at? Of course, you won the lottery. Yay. And that's how it is with pain. Pain can be the absolute death sentence, or it can be the, okay, I'm living with this, but I've got good news here, and I'm going to focus on this good news. And if there's a lot of background noise or background music, maybe that will help distract you. You know, your pain can become like that background noise rather than the main event. If there's too much going on at the moment for the pain to grab your attention, then you've got it made. If you're busy at work, you can lose that focus on pain. You can lose yourself in your hobbies. I love doing this radio show, and it keeps my mind busy and keeps me distracted. And so you continue, and the distraction really, really helps until you stop. Only later, when you're doing something that is more like maybe you're sitting around home and you're not doing much, and then you suddenly become constantly aware of that nagging pain. With no distractions, the pain signals take priority once more. So the distraction is very, very, very important for people with pain. Go walk the dog, or Netflix and movies, or play video games, or play an instrument, or do a puzzle, or read a book with a glass of wine, or cook up a new recipe, or call a friend, or go kiss your husband or wife, whatever it takes. Whatever it works for you to occupy your mind, give it a try. And an added benefit of indulging in activities that you enjoy is that you are releasing endorphins. And what's endorphins? Well, what they do is they help to block pain signals from reaching your brain. So that's a biggie, a double-barreled attack. This will also help to improve your mood. You relax and lower your anger levels. And if you feel happier, it will have a positive effect on your pain levels too. That stress will really get you. So watch out for stress. Try to stay away from stress as much as you can. Good news. Keep good news flowing around you. Scientific evidence for the effectiveness of distraction for people with chronic pain is still scarce at present. But people with chronic pain, they know. And one study did show that people with chronic pain who used distraction techniques were able to last longer on an activity that produced pain than those that weren't distracted. So that suggests that distraction meant it took longer for the pain to get through to their consciousness and upset their rhythm. So while distraction shouldn't be seen as a solution, it can be an effective coping strategy that's worth experimenting with. And if you find activities that you enjoy and that can also give you a few hours relief from the pain, well, that can't be a bad thing, right? And rounding things up, you can see the danger perhaps now of allowing chronic pain to make you angry. It becomes a vicious circle, and that package comes back into play, full play, where being in pain can cause anger, but being angry will only cause you to be in more pain. And so the viciousness continues. Pain causes anger, anger causes pain. It's like the dog chasing its tail and never catches it. So pain causes anger when you get frustrated at not being able to achieve certain goals. Blame the world for your situation and can't shake off the feelings of injustice that your chronic pain experience. Remember, this anger does what? It alienates you from your loved ones, leaving you without a support network that is vital for your well-being. It can also make your loved ones depressed and anxious, those that you want to be helpful to the most. you end up hurting the most. So be aware of that and work with it. It is a problem that needs addressing. Luckily, this can be done by changing how you think about your pain. Negative thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes to pain can become automatic and hard to change. Just to remember the techniques that we just talked about. And actually, knowing those techniques will help you, because when you go through workman comp issues, they can be so complicated and so detailed that you are not going to want pain trying to take over your whole being. As bad as the pain is, there are ways that you can relax, and that relaxation is vital as well. But you want to relax, and you want to stay busy, and you want to do things in moderation. And don't push yourself. Of course, you can make the choice. Maybe something you're going to do one day is worth hurting more the next day. Maybe you're going to go to a wedding, and by the time you get home from all the activities, you will be sore, you will be hurting, it will be very painful. But it is worth it because you got to go to that wedding. So, you just have to weigh things out. I hope that some of the techniques that I've given will help you through your workman comp experience and painful situations that you may have as you cope with your workman comp experience. We're glad you're back. Missed you here. It was great having Terry on for a little while. I hope he answered some questions regarding workman's comp that you might have had. And I am getting ready to talk about a whole lot more related to workman's comp that really you might just really want to know. And make sure, if you do have any workman comp questions for either Terry or me, do contact me. And you know how to reach me. I'm hoping it's Flobo at KLRNRadio.com, or you can do Flo's Focus at KLRNRadio.com. And you can even go to Twitter and look up Flobo, and you'll find me there too. So just find me and contact me with any questions. We'd love to be able to help you out any way that we could. And we know going through workman's comp issues, especially if you are having pain in the midst of all that, is not a fun time. So please feel free to contact us anytime. That's something that both of us can help you on. Now, regarding workman comp, here's 10 basics of workers' comp that all employers should know, and employees, so that includes you. Let me just say, you never think you're going to be hurt. We're always the one that's never going to get hurt. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm hurting, and the reason I'm hurting is my back is going a little nutty because it says it's going to rain tomorrow. And the reason that it's done this for 12 years now is due to an injury that I sustained and had to be on workman's comp for that, and am permanently disabled because of it. So yeah, you really need to know these things. You may not be the one that's going to be exempt after all. And you do need to know that workman's comp is the primary insurance that applies when you are injured, regardless of who is at fault or negligent. It is the exclusive remedy. Some exclusions, of course, do apply, like if you decide you're going to hurt yourself, I don't know, maybe you're a cutter or something, I hope not, or you're going to be intoxicated at work, or you're going to start war. Well, all of those claims are going to most likely be denied. And aggravation of a pre-existing condition can also be covered in some states if that aggravation is caused by the employment. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Employees are required to report an injury to the employer within a specific time frame. If reported later than the statutory requirement, the claim can be denied. Like most states, I think now are 30 days. And if I'm not mistaken, Pennsylvania has 120 days to report. So make sure, even if it's something little, like Terry and I both have said, even if it's something little, go ahead and file, because you never know, it could turn big. In my case, I had what I thought was a pull muscle once, so I went ahead and filed the claim like I thought I was supposed to do, which was a good thing that I did. But indeed, I was able to get over it in no time. Was just off work a couple weeks, even if that long. May have been a few days, I don't know. But at any rate, I was over it quickly and I was back to work. The second time I thought was the same thing, so I went ahead and filed, and it's a good thing I did, because I was injured again. And this time I was injured for real. And it's been 12 years later, and I'm still not over it. So just always make sure, always, like we can't stress that enough, make sure you get that first paperwork filed. Aside from emergency response teams, volunteers are generally not considered employees and therefore not covered by work comp insurance. Now, we're going to cover this one later, too. And I have different feelings on this particular issue than Terry does. We're human, so okay. Illegal aliens and minors can sometimes get workman's comp. A waiting period applies for wage loss benefits. If an employer can return the employee to work before the waiting period expires, usually 7 days, there's no wage loss benefit due the employee. A claims cost savings to the employer indeed. If an employee is released by a physician as physically capable of some level of work and alternate work commensurate with the level of physical capability is offered by the employee may not be entitled to wage loss benefits. Does that make sense? We'll talk a little more about that in a little while too. I'm just coming over some of the basics right now. The state workers' comp governing body determines the employee's work comp benefits rate each year. Employers can also apply FMLA concurrent with an employee out on workman's comp. And this is why you're going to want to know some workman comp vocabulary. You know, we always said in every career, they have their own language. Nurses do, doctors do, you know, the medical world does, the legal world does. Every place you want to go to pretty much has its own specific terminology, which we used to call language. And of course, the sooner an employee returns to work after an injury, the sooner he recovers from that injury, and the lesser the insurance cost is to the employer. And of course, the longer the employee is off work, the lesser the chance he will ever return to work and get off workers' comp. And clearly, the higher the worker comp insurance cost to the employer. So what does workman comp cover? Well, it covers basic benefits. Medical care for the injured worker paid by your employer to help you recover from an injury or illness caused by work. Temporary disability benefits, payments if you lose wages because your injury prevents you from doing your usual job while recovering. And how to file. Inform your employer of your injury, number one. And if you work for a self-insured employer, fill your claim directly with them. And then seek medical treatment at once. Okay, you need to know a few vocabulary words related to workman's comp. First, traumatic injury. This is a wound or other condition of the body caused by external force, including stress or strain. It must be identifiable by time and place of occurrence and member of the body, and must be caused by a specific event, of series of events or incidents within a single day or work shift, meaning that it has to happen within a single day or work shift. You have to be able to put a date on when this traumatic injury happened. And a wound or other condition of the body that was caused by external force, which does include stress or strain, by the way. You can have that as your traumatic injury. Okay, occupational disease. A condition produced in the work environment over a period longer than one work day or shift may result from systemic infection, repeated stress or strain, exposure to toxins, poisons, or fumes, or other continuing conditions of the work environment. And then you have performance of duty. Coverage includes injuries that occur while on agency premises during work hours, while on the premises for a reasonable length of time before or after working hours, in agency parking facilities, on official travel, or engaged in formal or agency-sanctioned recreation. Other circumstances may be considered. Traumatic injury. As soon as a traumatic injury happens, report it to OMS, and they will triage the injury, make decisions as to severity, preliminary diagnosis, and immediate care. Another word you will hear a lot in regard to workman's comp is cumulative injury. Cumulative injury is somewhat self-explanatory. One of the most common workplace injuries are caused by repeated exposure, events, or repetitive motions. A cumulative trauma happens as often as specific injuries in the workplace, but is not as commonly understood. A cumulative trauma, sometimes called continuous trauma, is a gradual onset of pain or symptoms. It is also sometimes referred to as overuse syndrome or repetitive strain injuries. The onset of symptoms can occur so slowly that one may ignore it when it first starts happening, until the symptoms become unbearable or the person realizes that left untreated, the symptoms are not going to go away. Cumulative trauma injuries are caused by repetitive work, such as frequent typing or heavy lifting. Carpal tunnel syndrome is one of the most common types of cumulative trauma. Often back injuries are caused by cumulative trauma, especially if the employee does a significant amount of moderate to heavy lifting at work. They are, however, called cumulative injuries and can refer to repetitive stress injuries, cumulative trauma disorders, and repeated motion injuries. So repetitive stress injuries are RSIs, cumulative trauma disorders, or CTDs, and Repeated motion injuries are RMIs. Okay, back injuries and carpal tunnel, as we've said, are two of the most common. Well, we know that now. Workers' comp should provide payment for medications, medical care, rehabilitative exercise, and a modified work schedule if needed. Unfortunately, if the cumulative injury persists and you do not get the treatment you need, a cumulative injury could eventually lead to a lifelong physical disability. Cumulative injuries most often affect the musculoskeletal system, which includes joints, muscles, tendons, ligaments, nerves, and blood vessels. Cumulative injuries occur most often when a worker is engaged in activities which include repetitive motions, forceful exertion such as pushing, lifting, gripping, and pulling, or using certain tools with rigid edges or vibration. Injuries can also increase if there is limited recovery time. The workers' compensation systems of several states have been expanded in recent years to include injuries and diseases caused by cumulative injury and occupational stress. This expansion has placed a financial burden on the respective systems, on employers, and on consumers, who ultimately must pay the cost of claims through higher-priced products or services. This expansion may not be justified from a social perspective. However, medical and sociological evidence is not conclusive as to whether occupational stress injuries or diseases, such as coronary heart disease, hypertension, stroke, and neuropsychiatric illness, are the direct result of stressful work environments. Using the California workers' compensation system as a model, the authors submit that the underlying premises of liability governing the expanded services system should be reassessed based, 1, on economic factors, specifically the increasing cost of workers' compensation, 2, on the capacity of the system to process an ever-increasing number of claims, and 3, on the principle on which workers' compensation systems were established, that of equity between the employer and the employee. On the basis of these 3 factors, the authors evaluated 3 legislative approaches to restructuring the expanded system: presumption of compensability, apportionment of liability, and threshold of compensability. The first recognizes that although certain health problems are related to the workplace, the degree of causation is difficult to prove. Under this approach, therefore, caution is presumed and injury compensated for all diseases and injuries that the system defines as work-related. The second holds that where a causal relationship between the work and the injury can be proved, the employer nevertheless should be responsible only for that portion of the disability actually caused by the workplace. The third directs that the injured employee should be compensated only when a direct causal link between the job and the injury or disease can be proved. If injury occurred after cure of duty or on travel, employee may go to an emergency room for treatment, but should report to OMS at the earliest time possible. Okay, so with your completed forms, you know what to do. The employer submits the form to supervisor no later than 30 days from the date of injury, unless your state specifically says otherwise and you are not working for federal. Step 2. Supervisor completes the forms and returns to the workers' compensation specialist within 2 days of receipt from the employee. Step 3, the specialist processes the forms and notifies employee or supervisor of next steps. Development of an occupational disease. So you report the occupational disease to OMS. The workers' compensation specialist will provide the employee and supervisor with appropriate forms and directions on what to do. One other very important word that is often related to workman comp cases that almost every individual becomes acquainted with is pain, P-A-I-N. When workman's comp issues are front and central, pain is often present. It is frequently felt as a raw agony. This pain never relents for many individuals who have entered the world of workman's comp. They must literally learn to live in an entirely different way than they did prior to the pain. We know that to feel pain, one only need to be injured. To understand why pain exists is a very interesting but very involved subject that would require another radio show focus. For summary, in advocating for people in pain, the following may be most helpful. If Congress would appropriate enough money for the NIH to study basic pain mechanisms, we would then be able to find medications to bring all pain under control. Senator Roy Blunt, representative from Missouri, Republican, is the chairperson of the NIH committee for this Senate. Write to him and to your own senators asking for this funding, which will benefit virtually everyone in one way or another. Don't search frantically for instant cures. For now, you must content yourself with very modest help in enduring pain. The drugs used to quiet the central nervous system in whatever form are non-specific treatments, opioids, anticonvulsants, local anesthetics, or currently available drugs are not the final answer. Let's provide the funding for scientists to blaze the trail to a real solution for pain. People who are in pain deserve release from this prison. Enough said regarding pain for the time being. One more important note, though. Pain is America's silent epidemic. Studies need to be done in this area. Just FYI, Senate subcommittee approved a $2 billion raise to $36.1 billion for the National Institutes of Health in the 2018 fiscal year that begins the 1st of October. $865 is set aside for drug abuse in the NIH budget. However, only $385 has been set aside for pain research by NIH. Although drug abuse is rampant in our country, some of this abuse will very likely, I could say definitely, be lowered if and when pain control is adequate. People that are in pain are going to do just about anything they can to control that pain. Oh.
A prophecy, weapons of war. Beneath the tree, a message of peace prevails over all, and the great white pine hears the eagle's call. When the eagle calls, when the eagle cries, don't turn away, don't run and hide. When the eagle calls, when the eagle cries, join hands as one, hold your head up high.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
When the eagle cries, join hands as one. Hold your head up high.
Okay, let's move on to types of compensation. Continuation of pay. A special leave category which entitles employees to have their regular pay continued with no charge to their own leave for up to 45 calendar days of disability and or medical treatment that follows on the job injury. COP is not granted for any occupational illness. Medical services, authorized for treatment of any condition which is causally related to the factors of federal employment. Employees are entitled to all services, appliances, and supplies prescribed or recommended by qualified physicians, which in the opinion of OWCP are likely to cure, give relief, reduce the degree or the period of compensable disability, or aid in the decrease of the amount of monthly compensation. Disability benefits. Employees who were disabled due to a work-related injury or occupational disease may be eligible for disability benefits. Disability benefits include temporary disability, loss of wage earning capacity, schedule awards, and other potential benefits. Contact NIH Workers' Compensation Specialist at 301-496-2404 with any questions regarding these benefits. And of course, death benefits. Survivors of an employee whose death is work-related are entitled to benefits that may include compensation payments, funeral expenses, transportation for the remains, and other related expenses. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, undocumented immigrants make up 3.5% of the United States population. In California alone, undocumented immigrants make up 10% of the workforce. With so many undocumented immigrants in the workforce, it is inevitable that some will get injured at work. But can undocumented immigrants get workers' compensation? Immigration Reform and Control Act is IRCA, IRCA. Undocumented immigrants are not legally authorized to work in the United States. The Immigration Reform and Control Act is a federal law that requires employers to verify their employees' eligibility to work in the United States. IRCA imposes heavy sanctions on employers who knowingly hire unauthorized employee. Multiple violations could cost an employer as much as $10,000 for each unauthorized employee. So, it's not very likely that they're going to get it, even if they can get it. However, in many cases, when undocumented immigrant employees were injured at work, employers tried to use IRCA to deny undocumented employee workers' compensation. Employers argue that since the undocumented workers aren't authorized to work in the United States, they are not legally employees and ineligible for workers' compensation. State laws, despite employers' reliance on IRCA, many state laws make undocumented immigrants eligible for workers' compensation. In many states, undocumented immigrants can get workers' compensation because the state statute specifically includes undocumented employees. For example, Arkansas's workers' compensation specifically states employee means any person, including a minor, whether lawfully or unlawfully employed in the service of an employer. Other states with statutes that expressly include undocumented immigrants include Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. An exception. In Wyoming, undocumented immigrants are not allowed to collect workers' compensation. While the wording of Wyoming statute seems to include undocumented immigrants when it defines employees as aliens whom the employer reasonably believes at the date of hire and the date of injury based upon documentation in the employer's possession to be authorized to work by the United States. Wyoming Supreme Court specifically ruled in the workers' compensation claim of Adrian R. Felix that an alien who is not authorized to work in the United States is not an employee and is not covered by Wyoming's worker compensation. Well, we were kind of late last time getting to our station identification, so this time we're going to try to be on time. We'll return in just a bit.
Friends are quiet angels who somehow make you see the light that's in the darkness before the dawn.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Found a quiet angel in
Hopefully, you remember how to contact me. You can find me at flowsvision@klrn.com. You can also find me on Twitter under FlowBo, and you will find me on iHeart and iTunes. And just look up Flows Vision. You'll see me there. However you want to contact me, contact me. There's a bunch more I'm on too. So check it out, see if I'm there. I sure hope to see you soon. I want to hear from you. Thanks. Back, one and all. So glad you're back. Missed you here. Now, regarding workman comp, here's 10 basics of workers' comp that all employers should know, and employees, so that includes you. You know, let me just say, you never think you're going to be hurt. We're always the one that's never going to get hurt. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm hurting, and the reason I'm hurting is my back is going a little nutty because it says it's going to rain tomorrow. And the reason that it's done this for 12 years now is due to an injury that I sustained and had to be on workman's comp for that and am permanently disabled because of it. So yeah, you really need to know these things. You may not be the one that's going to be exempt after all. And you do need to know that workman's comp is the primary insurance that applies when you are injured, regardless of who is at fault or negligent. It is the exclusive remedy. Some exclusions, of course, do apply, like if you decide you're going to hurt yourself, I don't know, maybe you're a cutter or something, I hope not, or you're going to be intoxicated at work, or you're going to start war. well, all of those claims are going to most likely be denied. And aggravation of a pre-existing condition can also be covered in some states if that aggravation is caused by the employment, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Employees are required to report an injury to the employer within a specific time frame. If reported later than the statutory requirement, the claim can be denied. Like most states, I think now are 30 days, and if I'm not mistaken, Pennsylvania has 120 days to report. So make sure, even if it's something little, like Terry and I both have said, even if it's something little, go ahead and file, because you never know, it could turn big. In my case, I had what I thought was a pull muscle once, so I went ahead and filed the claim like I thought I was supposed to do, which was a good thing that I did, but indeed, I was able to get over it in no time. Was just off work a couple weeks, even if that long. May have been a few days, I don't know. But at any rate, I was over it quickly and I was back to work. The second time I thought was the same thing, so I went ahead and filed, and it's a good thing I did because I was injured again. And this time I was injured for real. And it's been 12 years later and I'm still not over it. So just always make sure, always, like we can't stress that enough, make sure you get that first paperwork filed. Aside from emergency response teams, volunteers are generally not considered employees and therefore not covered by work comp insurance. Now, we're going to cover this one later, too. And I have different feelings on this particular issue than Terry does. We're human, so okay. Illegal aliens and minors can sometimes get workman's comp. A waiting period applies for wage loss benefit. If an employer can return the employee to work before the waiting period expires, usually 7 days, there's no wage loss benefit due the employee. A claims cost savings to the employer indeed. If an employee is released by a physician as physically capable of some level of work and alternate work commensurate with the level of physical capability is offered by the employee may not be entitled to wage loss benefits. Does that make sense? We'll talk a little more about that in a little while too. I'm just coming over some of the basics right now. The state workers' comp governing body determines the employee's work comp benefits rate each year. You're going to want to know some workman comp vocabulary. You know, we always said in every career they have their own language. Nurses do, doctors do, you know, the medical world does, the legal world does. Every place you want to go to pretty much has its own specific terminology, which we used to call language. And of course, the sooner an employee returns to work after an injury, the sooner he recovers from that injury, and the lesser the insurance cost is to the employer. And of course, the longer the employee is off work, the lesser the chance he will ever return to work and get off workers' comp. And clearly, the higher the worker comp insurance cost to the employer. So what does workman comp cover? Well, it covers basic benefits. Medical care for the injured worker paid by your employer to help you recover from an injury or illness caused by work. Temporary disability benefits, payments if you lose wages because your injury prevents you from doing your usual job while recovering. And how to file. Inform your employer of your injury. Number one. And if you work for a self-insured employer, fill your claim directly with them. And then seek medical treatment at once. Okay, you need to know a few vocabulary words related to workman's comp. First, traumatic injury. This is a wound or other condition of the body caused by external force, including stress or strain. It must be identifiable by time and place of occurrence and member of the body, and must be caused by a specific event, of series of events or incidents within a single day or work shift, meaning that it has to happen within a single day or work shift. You have to be able to put a date on when this traumatic injury happened. And a wound or other condition of the body that was caused by external force, which does include stress or strain, by the way. You can have that as your traumatic injury. Okay, occupational disease. A condition produced in the work environment over a period longer than one work day or shift may result from systemic infection, repeated stress or strain, exposure to toxins, poisons, or fumes, or other continuing conditions of the work environment. And then you have performance of duty. Coverage includes injuries that occur while on agency premises during work hours, while on the premises for a reasonable length of time before or after working hours, in agency parking facilities, on official travel, or engaged in formal or agency-sanctioned recreation. Other circumstances may be considered, and they will triage the injury, make decisions as to severity, preliminary diagnosis, and immediate care. Another word you will hear a lot in regard to workman's comp is cumulative injury. Cumulative injury is somewhat self-explanatory. One of the most common workplace injuries are caused by repeated exposure, events, or repetitive motions. A cumulative trauma happens as often as specific injuries in the workplace, but is not as commonly understood. A cumulative trauma, sometimes called continuous trauma, is a gradual onset of pain or symptoms. It is also sometimes referred to as overuse syndrome or repetitive strain injuries. The onset of symptoms can occur so slowly that one may ignore it when it first starts happening until the symptoms become unbearable or the person realizes that left untreated, the symptoms are not going to go away. Cumulative trauma injuries are caused by repetitive work, such as frequent typing or heavy lifting. Carpal tunnel syndrome is one of the most common types of cumulative trauma. Often back injuries are caused by cumulative trauma, especially if the employee does a significant amount of moderate to heavy lifting at work. They are, however, called cumulative injuries and can refer to repetitive stress injuries, cumulative trauma disorders, and repeated motion injuries. So repetitive stress injuries are RSIs, cumulative trauma disorders or CTDs, and repeated motion injuries are RMIs. Okay, back injuries and carpal tunnel, as we've said, are two of the most common. Well, we know that now. Workers' comp should provide payment for medications, medical care, rehabilitative exercise, and a modified work schedule if needed. Unfortunately, if the cumulative injury persists and you do not get the treatment you need, a cumulative injury could eventually lead to a lifelong physical disability. Cumulative injuries most often affect the musculoskeletal system, which includes joints, muscles, tendons, ligaments, nerves, and blood vessels. Cumulative injuries occur most often when a worker is engaged in activities which include repetitive motions, forceful exertion such as pushing, lifting, gripping, and pulling, or using certain tools with rigid edges or vibration. Injuries can also increase if there is limited recovery time. Disability benefits. Employees who were disabled due to a work-related injury or occupational disease may be eligible for disability benefits. Disability benefits include temporary disability, loss of wage earning capacity, schedule awards, and other potential benefits. Contact NIH Workers' Compensation Specialist at 301-496-2404 with any questions regarding these benefits. And of course, death benefits. Survivors of an employee whose death is work-related are entitled to benefits that may include compensation payments, funeral expenses, transportation for the remains, and other related expenses. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, undocumented immigrants make up 3.5% of the United States population. In California alone, undocumented immigrants make up 10% of the workforce. With so many undocumented immigrants in the workforce, it is inevitable that some will get injured at work. No tango documentos opens up a Pandora's box of legal issues, literally. Many argue that undocumented employees should receive no benefits because they are working in the country illegally. In many border crossing locations, there is a government sign which reads, "Warning, if you are entering the United States without presenting yourself to an immigration officer, you may be arrested and prosecuted for violating United States immigration and custom laws." Many argue that because of the employee's undocumented immigration status, there can be no valid enforceable employment contract between the employee and employer. Some argue that deportation and exclusion from the U.S. is paramount to incarceration, and many states provide for suspension of benefits during periods of incarceration. On the other hand, some argue that where the employer knows that the employee is an illegal immigrant, there is no valid reason to withhold benefits. They point out that workers' compensation laws were enacted to make sure the expense of injuries created by the industry was placed on the industry rather than on society or employees. They claim that anyone knowingly employing legal immigrants should not be able to reap the benefits of doing so, but avoid the responsibilities. By denying benefits, the employer shifts the cost of the situation it has knowingly created on the tax-paying public, giving it a superior financial position to those employers who operate within the bounds of the law. No matter which side of the debate you were on, decisions regarding a workers' compensation claim presented by an illegal immigrant must be made. With immigration issues grabbing the headlines around the country, understanding the workers' compensation claims involving illegals is vital to claims handling. It remains illegal for U.S. employers to hire or recruit illegal immigrants or to refer them for work and receive a fee. The U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Services and the Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA, still make it illegal for employers to knowingly employ undocumented workers. An illegal immigrant is any person who is unlawfully present in this country, which can happen in a number of ways, including entering the country without a visa or valid entry document, overstaying a valid visa, and many others. The Immigration Reform and Control Act is a federal law that requires employers to verify their employees' eligibility to work in the United States. IRCA imposes heavy sanctions on employers who knowingly hire unauthorized employees. Multiple violations could cost an employer as much as $10,000 for each unauthorized employee. However, in many cases, when undocumented immigrant employees were injured at work, employers tried to use IRCA to deny undocumented employee workers' compensation. Employers argue that since the undocumented workers aren't authorized to work in the United States, they are not legally employees and ineligible for workers' compensation. State laws, despite employers' reliance on IRCA, many state laws make undocumented immigrants eligible for workers' compensation. In many states, undocumented immigrants can get workers' compensation because the state statute specifically includes undocumented employees. For example, Arkansas's workers' compensation specifically states employee means any person, including a minor, whether lawfully or unlawfully employed in the service of an employer. Other states with statutes that expressly include undocumented immigrants include Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. An exception. In Wyoming, undocumented immigrants are not allowed to collect workers' compensation. While the wording of Wyoming statute seems to include undocumented immigrants when it defines employees as aliens whom the employer reasonably believes at the date of hire and the date of injury, based upon documentation in the employer's possession, to be authorized to work by the United States. Wyoming Supreme Court specifically ruled in the workers' compensation claim of Adrian R. Felix that an alien who is not authorized to work in the United States is not an employee and is not covered by Wyoming's worker compensation.
Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for good times and bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are
for. You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
You are my sunshine in stormy weather. You ease my pain. Oh,
Sometimes it helps to take a look back so that we can understand where we are in today's time compared to yesterday. The same is true of workman's comp. Understanding where it's come from and how it originated into today's time is an interesting topic. We'll just cover that briefly. The modern system of workers' compensation, you see, is extremely complicated. It's no secret that it produces considerable grief to those who must deal with it daily. I can say amen to that. These often seemingly impossible regulations appear in one form or another in all industrialized nations. Did you know that? Though it can cause much concern for those who must file for it, nothing has been found that works better thus far. Maybe someday. Let's take a brief look again at how this began and why this is so important in today's time. Though we don't know just how long compensation for bodily injury of some form or another has been around, we do know it dates to days of antiquity. Way back in 2050 BC, it is known that the law of provided monetary compensation for specific injury to workers' body parts, including fractures. Yeah, way back in 2050 BC. Also, ancient Greek, Roman, Arab, and Chinese law had guidelines set that covered precise payments for the loss of a body part. Their distinction between impairments, which was the loss of function of a body part, and disabilities, the loss of ability to perform certain tasks, still informs our workers' comp laws today. The rise of the Industrial Revolution meant extreme working conditions in early factories, and not good extreme working conditions, but pretty horrible ones at times. Hazards were plenty, and injury rates were colossal. The legal framework for compensating injuries was exceptionally so restrictive that the following principles, 3 of them, became known as the unholy trinity of defenses. If the employer could prove any one of these to be true about the injury, the worker couldn't claim a single coin. These 3 defenses were: 1, contributory negligence. If the worker was in any way responsible for his injury, the employer was not at fault. Irregardless of how hazardous the machinery was, any worker who slipped and lost an arm or leg was not entitled to any compensation. This was established in the United States through the case of Martin versus the Wabash Railroad, in which a freight conductor fell off the train. Although inspectors subsequently blamed a loose handrail, his injuries did not receive compensation because inspecting the train for faulty equipment was one of his job duties. 2. The fellow servant rule. Under the fellow servant rule, employers were not held liable if the worker's injuries resulted in any part from the action or negligence of a fellow employee. This was established in Britain through the case of Priestley versus Fowler in 1837, a case of an injured butcher boy. In America, precedent was provided 5 years later by Farnwell versus the Boston and Worcester Railroad Company. 3. The assumption of risk. The doctrine of assumption of risk was exceptionally far-reaching. It held simply that employees know of the hazards of any particular job when they sign their contracts. Therefore, by agreeing to work in a position, they assume any inherent risk it carries. Employers were required to provide such safety measures as were considered appropriate in the industry as a whole. In the 19th century, this often left a great deal to be desired. Assumption of risk was often formalized at the beginning of an employee's hiring date. Many industries required contracts in which workers signed away their right to sue for injury. These contracts became known as the worker's right to die or death contracts. It was so uncommon for a working man to win compensation for injury that private organizations such as the English Friendly Societies and German Krankenkassen were formed that offered laborers the option of buying various kinds of disability insurance. Eventually, a better legal system would end these dark days and bring better arrangements for the hurt workers. A system of social insurance known as the Employers' Liability Law of 1871 was started in Prussia, of all places. This provided some social protection for workers in certain factories, quarries, railroads, and mines. In 1884, workers' accident insurance was pushed through in Prussia, which would lay the groundwork for today's worker compensation insurance. Unfortunately, the trend toward compensating workers for their occupational injuries was a little slower to hit the United States. It took Upton Sinclair's shocking 1906 novel, The Jungle, which details the horrors workers experienced in Chicago slaughterhouses to stir the public's outrage. The Jungle had the following graphic passage and others similar to it. And this passage is, the fertilizer workers' particular trouble was that they fell into the vats, and when they were fished out, there was never enough of them to be worth exhibiting. Sometimes they would be overlooked for days, till all but the bones of them had gone out to the world as Durham's pure lard, beef lard. Yeah. Mr. Sinclair's immediate goals were not realized. In the short term, the swell of public opinion in the book's wake led not to legislation aimed at improving workers' condition, but to the Food and Drug Act of 1906 and the Meat Inspection of 1906, both primary milestones in the evolution of the Civil War-era Bureau of Chemistry into the modern Food and Drug Administration. At the federal level, sentiment for modern workers' compensation ranged a few years ahead of the state legislatures, but the matter was generally considered best left to the states. The federal government did regulate interstate commerce, however, and what is arguably the first compensation system in America was proposed by President Taft and put into law in 1908 to cover those workers involved in interstate trade. The first comprehensive workers' compensation law was finally passed shortly thereafter in Wisconsin in 1911. 9 other states passed regulations that year, followed by 36 others before the decade was out. The final state to pass workers' compensation legislation was Mississippi in 1948. The response of the medical community was lukewarm at best. The attitudes of medical professionals changed dramatically in the 1930s, however, when Social Security disability insurance was created to insure those who could not work due to infirmities that were not work-related. This vast expansion of the need for physician involvement and evaluation proved very lucrative. The American Medical Association quickly published the popular guide to the evaluation of permanent impairment, which has been through multiple editions since. As managed care has come to play a greater role in the healthcare system, many physicians have come to realize that compensation evaluations represent a stable and high-paying source of income. The various workers' compensation statutes in America are all modeled loosely after the original Prussian system. Industrial accidents are accepted as a fact of life, and the system exists to deal with their financial consequences as fast as possible. Most states require employers to carry workers' compensation insurance for their full or part-time employees. As a general rule, claims are handled by state compensation boards, although decisions can be appealed to the state court system. In 5 exceptions, Wyoming, Tennessee, New Mexico, Alabama, and Louisiana, claims are taken directly to the courts, but special state agencies exist to assist the processing of claims. The definition of compensable injury has gradually evolved over the years. Although it was once interpreted to mean a sudden sudden industrial accident. In recent years, most states have added language to include occasional exposures and overuse syndromes, such as the conditions we talked about earlier due to constant use, repetitive injuries. In general, compensation is paid both in the form of wage replacement, usually at about 2/3 salary for the period of total disability, and in the form of lump sum payments for any residual permanent partial disability. Employers must also pay for the worker's medical and rehabilitation costs. Many employers quite aggressively pursue rehabilitation and pay for services such as work hardening programs that are not required by the letter of the law. They have found these to be highly cost-effective given the fact that the outcome if the worker fails to return to work could be permanent total disability payments for life. One special case that most states have now come to recognize is that of the second injury. In Oklahoma in the 1920s, a one-eyed worker lost his remaining eye in an industrial accident. His employer was forced by the compensation board to pay not for the loss of a single eye, but for total permanent disability given the patient's blindness. Immediately, virtually all the one-eyed, one-armed, and one-legged workers in the state were deemed by their employers to represent unnecessary risk and were fired. To solve this dilemma, most states have created second injury funds run by the government, which all the private insurers pay into. These are used to make up the difference when a second injury proves incapacitating only because of a prior injury to another body part. Although their cost is relatively minimal and they initially appear to be a minor detail, second injury funds are absolutely critical in maintaining the employability of amputees. The basic structure of the American workers' compensation system has remained unchanged throughout the century and is overall a success in the eyes of employers and employees alike. Only in the last 5 years have major changes in the landscape of workers' compensation law begun to appear. The primary instrument of change has been the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, one of the central pieces of legislation to emerge from the Bush administration. The ADA actually represents a dramatic expansion of a much earlier legislation that required government programs, contractors, and any entity receiving federal funding to make their facilities accessible to the handicapped. Its language was relatively restrictive, and the law applied only when persons were excluded from a program or employment solely because of their disability. The ADA was the result of a massive campaign to improve the employability of the disabled in America. It met with resounding legislative success. There were only 6 no votes in the Senate and 28 in the House. Unlike previous legislation, the ADA encompasses all of the American workplace, not just that fraction associated with the federal government. It also contains language that allows much broader judicial freedom in interpretation. The ADA requires that employers make reasonable accommodation for workers with disabilities, but no legal standards for the definition of reasonable are provided. Precedent does exist for accommodating workers with special needs. A series of rulings has mandated that employers need to accommodate employees' religious wishes, Sabbath day off, wearing of religious clothing, etc., only if the cost is minimal and the accommodation would not significantly disrupt the central business enterprise. Some state disability laws place specific monetary cap on the amount employers can be required to spend to accommodate individual workers. By avoiding this kind of more specific language, many employers fear the ADA has created an environment in which the cost of employing disabled workers are highly unpredictable. The new law is fuzzy, too, in its definition of disability. Traditional government policy toward the disabled focused on 3 groups: the legally blind, the deaf, and the absolute wheelchair bound. The statistic that 1 in 6 Americans, approximately 43 million, are disabled requires the inclusion of a large number of less immobilizing physical impairments and mental disabilities. Indeed, mental illness alone creates significant confusion. The DSM, as first published, contained just over 100 disorders. It now contains 3 times that number. For the employer, simply knowing whether or not a potential employee has a disability is often difficult. The ADA severely restricts employers' access to prior medical records before an offer of employment is made. Incidentally, these provisions have been successfully used by physicians to prevent state medical boards and hospitals from obtaining records indicating prior drug or alcohol addiction. The most commonly cited cited disability in employment-related suits filed under the ADA is back pain, 19% of the total, followed by compressive neuropathy and similar neurologic disorders, 12%, and mental illness, 12%. Only 8% of complaints have come from the wheelchair-bound and 3% from the deaf or blind. In one celebrated Texas case, a worker for the Santa Fe Railroad was awarded a $305,000 workers' compensation settlement for permanent total disability based on physician's testimony that he would never be able to work again after his work-related back injury. 8 days after his settlement, he filed suit under the ADA, claiming he was wrongfully terminated due to a disability and should be rehired with accommodation. Although excessively intricate and burdened by separate implementation schemes for each of the 50 states, workers' compensation law remains one of the relative success stories of American legislation. Its three critical benefits remain. First, the employer gets tort relief. Second, the employee gets a relatively quick, equitable, and predictable no-fault compensation scheme. Finally, the system carries an intrinsic incentive toward rehabilitation of the injured worker. The subjective nature of defining impairment and disability themselves will almost certainly allow creative personal injury lawyers to find new ways to collect for their clients and themselves, whether through the ADA or other legislation. The survival of a viable workers' compensation system will require continued vigilance by both federal and state governments. And now you know the rest of the story of the continuing saga of workman's comp in America.